up is consent agenda. A vote for the minutes from January 18th. Does anyone have any questions or comments from the minutes? Jill?
Yes. So I just wanted to find it and then clarify within. I really did. We talked about the subcommittee. There it is. So under the evaluation committee and the subcommittee, we had talked about having a folder that was evidence that would be shared with the public. In that we had a superintendent's evaluation folder shared with the committee, and that's flip-flopped.
Okay.
In that we talked about that having a link on the superintendent's webpage. And I think that there was a note to ask Jacqueline or to have somebody do that.
Okay.
And so I just kind of wanted to make note of that kind of flip-flopping, and just of note, the superintendent evaluation information, which is public documents, just kind of keeping it in one place for us, just to have it all handy. So that switch.
Okay. All right, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for picking them up. Next up is visitor comments. Any citizen wishing to speak before the committee must sign in with the administrative assistant prior to the opening of the regular session of the school committee. Visitor will identify themselves by name and address and shall speak for no longer than 2 minutes. For anyone who is unable to sign in ahead of time, we ask that you clearly state your name and address so that this information can be included in the records of the meeting. Do we have any visitor comments for today?
Right now, there are attendees, there's nobody.
Yeah, I got 5 attendees and 5 panelists. So. Okay. Now it's Marcus. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah.
So before, I don't know if you guys know, but before each meeting, I typically meet with either Mr. Bowen, the store or both. And so I met with Mr. Jordan this time, and we decided that I'd like to take a deeper look at the schools instead of the current event picture, and bring out insights and new things that are happening inside the building. So with that being said, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive and move on. Our program with studies under revision for the school council and also started. We've been working on with that, we have a cybersecurity class that's coming soon, and the office of our 12th grade. So
That'll be next year, Marcus?
with the $10,000 grant. GC courses for next year. So you can sign up for 1 free class each semester. You can go on campus, online, you can go, no, just online environment. Last semester I did that, and now I have completely online, no Zoom, just assignment. And I personally really liked it a lot, and I think a lot of students are appreciating it as more than taking advantage of it than ever. And then also, each semester there will be a course offered strictly just for the address, and they'll show the kids and the option for now. Yeah, program. Foundation, which is we're talking awareness. students will be able to design this patch that the police officers will vote on, so they can, it's through this paper, so you can, after your projects are done, or if you would like to, you can design one. And all of them have to be submitted by February 11th. So then the design can be sent to the police station and off to the local. For the month of April, they will wear that as on their. The class 2024 has teacher fundraiser. The seniors have a calendar raffle going on. Teacher of the month for January was Mr. Kern. I've also been doing school treatment plan with the school committee, or school council side. And I know that we'll be seeing that later, so come back to that. We have the Daily Diner newsletter, which is worked on by students in the building. And there's also doing some sort of a buddy program or another way to introduce students into the lower elementary levels so that their students in East Meadow and the high school will be able to kind of intermingle and have look ahead at what they will do in their future and career. I don't know if we see that as a light system, or they would get you over there. I know Hope is working on that. Ms. Jordan and Ms. Jordan are also working on looking at something like that. And lastly, from the music department, we have a new teacher here, Mr. Ty. He's great, he's very talented. So a few projects that we're working on right now in class, they're working on media music, so it includes music from video games and movies. And they're also doing different genres, listening and understanding different genres and how they work and sound them, as well as making presentations on artists and genres.
Questions for Margaret? Next up is business. First is AP Computer Science.
Push that back to our meeting on the 15th. And that is just an opportunity for Mr. Kern and some of the AP students to share a little bit about what they want to do. Certainly conflict of interest.
Next is the math file.
Well aware about the mic being closed.
On top.
Yep. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for having us. So anytime there's additional language added to a student handbook, typically we approve over at the end of August, early stages in September. We found a need to change some language or actually add some language to put in more firm language regarding masks in our building. We have a mask policy. There's a lot of redirecting students if they're walking in the hall and their mask slips a little bit below their nose. We always do, we tap on their nose and say, or make comments, if that's a nice looking nose. We need to do better, right? So we do a lot of redirecting. We've heard from our student body and some concerned students that they would like us to dive deeper into consequences for those that are habitual offenders. So with that, I present to you, it should be in your folder, some mask language. So the first offense would be verbal warning. The second offense would be a lunch detention. And the third offense or repeated offense would be a Saturday school. So we're guessing that nobody's going to want to hang out with Mr. Gordon or Mr. Dorman on a Saturday school from 8 to 10 in the morning. But since we started talking about these things and saying like we're giving lunch detentions out and doing those things, our kids have been much, much better. It's challenging. We're teenagers and it slips. Some of them don't fit properly. Some do it, they don't even realize it. You could be standing right in front of them and they're down below their nose and you look at them like, and they look back at you and they're like, what? Oh my goodness. And they forget, right? So we're trying to compromise a bit here by presenting something that we're flexible. At the same time, like we have to understand that we are taking it serious. So we have started issuing, lunch detentions. And again, there's been a very small pool of students that, have habitual offenses. So I think it was time to put some language in our student handbook. That's why we're presenting it to you. It is not unheard of to have a Saturday school. It is in the student handbook, but it's not tied to math language. So that's really the difference here. We do have a line in the student handbook that says for administration discretion. So, but we wanted to bring that to you just because if you hear some chatter, out there that we're giving Saturday schools, it's not just because it was a first offense, it's you really had to earn it.
So how do the violations, I see teacher referral, so, just walk us through the process.
So we have a Google form that the teachers use, and if the student, it's easily accessible. They may not get to it right away. We have said to the teachers, if the student is, not compliant, to send them out of class. We'll address it down in the main office. So they fill it out and it sends an automatic response to Mr. Dorman and myself. And then we meet with the student and we give them their, depending on what offense it is. And again, our numbers are really small. So the students they hear the message every morning on the PA, about appropriate mask wearing and things like that. So
My one concern is like Saturday school, that it's extra responsibility for you and Mr. Dorman, and is it one Saturday a month, one Saturday a quarter, like, how do we go about that? And then sometimes there might be practices or things like that, and then it's seen as like a detention, so that, they're not penalized for their sport if they have to miss.
yeah, so it would trump. It would trump it. And again, we brought it to that level for those reasons, if we're serious. It would not be an inconvenience to me. I would be happy to be have 2 hours of time on a weekend without children, dogs, husband, the whole 9 yards. So it's not, I'd be happy to do it. That means a lot to the student body and those students that have brought concerns, and they know that we're here to support them. Again, I don't anticipate getting, having to give Saturday school every single Saturday, but it would be based on referrals. And I'm hoping it would be a one and done for the student. Like, again, nobody wants to hang out with Ms. Jordan and a list of things to do on a Saturday morning at 8.
I do have a question. I know this was discussed before, but how many times do they get a mask break here at the high school?
So they get a 9-minute break in the morning, and then at lunch is mask free. A lot of our kids, if they're so used to wearing it, to be honest with you, once they finish, they're so trained, they just put it right back on.
Okay.
Like, our kids are really, really good about it. Teachers are encouraged to bring them out for mask breaks outside. I send notifications, teachers encouraging that, even though it's freezing out.
Yeah.
Put some coats on and go for a quick 2, 3, 4 minute walk.
Okay.
So you have some, teachers, they don't do mask breaks in the classroom though. There are no mask breaks in the classroom. It's only in the cafeteria, during break and lunch, and then outdoors. So they can, if one student had 7 classes, they could technically have 7 or 8 plus the 2 already scheduled.
Right.
But
So there's adequate times where they can have the masks off.
and again, it's winter, so it's a bit chillier,
Yeah.
especially in the last week. But when it's warmer out, the teachers have no problem going outside. We can continue to encourage the teachers to do that though.
Yeah.
I just have another question, pending how long this lasts. Is there a time frame for this? Like, I'm thinking long-term, if we're still in this situation, some of the warning in September, and then the second warning is in March, is that's still going to count as lunch detention?
We're super flexible.
Okay,
We're really looking at the kids that are like really just not
like
compliant
more than
with
a
it.
slip of like a quick fix.
Yeah, our kids are really good. Our kids are really good about it. They are. They appreciate being redirected, but at the same time, we're trying to find a happy medium here. I have students that come to me very concerned. I have staff come to me that are concerned, that they have that same student. So we encourage a staff. If you have that same student, let us know and we will address it. So that's why we put this language in place. So it would really, for this, once it's in the student handbook, this would be considered 21-22. So then you would have to re-vote on it. So we would have to figure out over the summer if we wanted this to still live in the student handbook.
I guess that's my only, I guess that's not it. I just don't want it to end up living in there, hopefully we'll be done with that. Like, it's not everyone's dream, that doesn't.
Yes.
You go away. All right, any other questions or anything on this? Do you need a vote on this for us, or should we just kind of letting us know that we're in there, or?
We do, because it's a school, it's student handbook.
I just wanted to comment too, that I appreciate the distinction you're making too between a lot of the redirection and kind of support and knowing the difference between a student that has had all those opportunities to make a change or like be redirected and have, staff or students, like whatever that looks like. And this isn't just like, okay, we talked to you once, someone else talked to you a second time. And, now you have this, now you have that. Okay, next person. Like, it's not the revolving door of discipline. It's actually, when you've exhausted all options, this is now what your turn to.
And there's certainly a lot of stuff in between there. Like, we're calling home, staff are emailing home. So there's a lot of steps in between. So to get to that point, we have to be really extreme.
So it's more of a blatant thing. Like when I first read this, I think that if someone walks around accidentally like this or talking to someone, that's how I interpreted it. I was like, oh my gosh, we're like really.
Well, that's the redirecting. So
Yeah.
Jen,
Yeah.
and I would just tap, and the kids appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're not the mask police in the hallway, right?
It's become like a whole new silence when you see people like, touch their nose or, take the motion, pick it up or things like that. But so I appreciate the fact that you've given us some explanation because I was like, oh, good Lord, we're gonna have,
Yes.
we're gonna have 47 kids every Saturday doing Saturday school.
No, just the idea of them hearing the word Saturday school is mortifying enough.
Will this take, sorry, Joe. Just one thing, is this going to also follow for transportation for the bus?
Transportation hasn't changed. They're required to wear a mask. The troubling piece is they work for a first student, right? And they fill out referrals. But as you know, bus drivers are driving.
Right.
The last thing they can do is take their eyes off the road to see
Of course,
the
right,
slouched down teenager
right.
in the seat, right? Who has their mask under their nose a little bit. So
I guess I was more thinking because it's teacher referral, there's so many other support staff that may not fall under teacher. Like, would they be able to tell a teacher, hey, so-and-so, maybe someone in the cafeteria could like go and approach a teacher, hey, this is like the third time I've told so-and-so, but they're not able to maybe access the.
they can, anyone can access it.
Anybody? Okay,
Yep, anybody can access it and they know where to find us too.
okay.
I guess I just have one other question or comment. Oftentimes, like even in the handbook and things like that, with discipline, it's at administrator's discretion. And in hearing you talk, a lot of this is, the first defense might come after so many things with phone calls and different things, and it's at your discretion or at Todd's discretion. So I'm wondering if some of that language might be built into what this looks like.
Certainly revisit.
Yeah, just because you may have had certain steps, it just might vary depending on how many, you might get 4 referrals at the same time for one particular, it just might look a little different.
So I envision, I know what the student handbook looks like, I can tell you why, but we have a chart in the student handbook, so I envision just dropping this in as part of the chart. So that's really where it falls, and in that there is a blurb about administrative discretion there.
So sorry, it's like.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yes,
that-
this would just be,
This is that whole disciplinary sort of chart thing that's in there. Okay.
yes, it would just
It's
be
just an addition.
Okay. So I think that then covers that. Jill. Any other questions or thoughts or comments, concerns on this? If not, I'll take motion.
I'll make a motion.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
thank you.
Next is the class donation.
Figure I'll just stay here for that.
Yeah. We'll do it.
So,
We'll have a little verse from school.
oh, awesome. Thanks, I'm really excited about it. So excited. So the girls lacrosse team has done an incredible job raising money. They approached me a few months back out of my AD role about getting new uniforms. It was not something that I had really considered. I feel like we just got uniforms, but it really has been 5 years. I don't even know where the time has gone. The numbers are starting to fall off, so they always do a nice job fundraising. They crushed the Krispy Kreme fundraiser. We ate really well today at the school. They received a $500 donation check from a flooring company. I was trying to find out the exact name of it, but I know we received it. I got it in my hand. It could have been, I just couldn't remember the name. I'm trying to text everybody to find out, but. And they got a $50 donation check from Garvey's Nutrition. Some of our students are frequents there at Garvey's Nutrition, if you've heard about it in Wilbraham. A $50 donation. So they raised a substantial amount of money. I did hear that they are anticipating an additional check, which we will get to the school committee for approval, but I have yet to see it from the Granby Legion. So bringing it to you to accept the donation so that money can be used to purchase athletic uniforms for the Granby girls lacrosse team.
We don't need to vote. Okay.
Yes.
Can I have a motion to accept the donation from the unnamed?
Yeah, do you need that? Yeah, I'll make the motion to accept the lacrosse donation.
Second? One second. All those in favor? Aye. Excellent news. And I'll let you know, we'll circle back and find out who it is. Okay, next is the school improvement plan. And since you're sitting there in the hot seat, we'll let you go first for the AG high school.
Sure. What would you like to present? I shared with you, I don't know if you checked your email, the 2 latest versions of one of the school improvement plan and one of my accountability slide. I would say, well, the school improvement plan, you present that, and that is going to be tiny. So I would probably say the cheat sheet, the focus priorities. Yes, I can't figure out. I have a new computer. I can't figure out. I'm trying over here.
It's a Word document.
Yeah, it's like. You can hit Zoom, but then. Try not. Yes.
Oh, that's That's the accountability one? We're doing that one?
So the school,
The slides are. Is the clip notes of the school. So instead of having to go into all that detail and how to, we said we can just present the slides that summarize the entire thing.
I'm gonna give you a minute just to kind of review and take a peek at focus priorities.
It was someone for us.
Thank you for getting that. I texted 3 people.
So thank you to someone for us for the lacrosse position. Hey, can someone please tell me how I make this bigger? I got it.
So the screen that you're looking at in front of you is my version of cheat sheet. Todd and I have worked some countless hours on really just trying to understand and take a dive into our accountability targets. So as you know, we're both in our first year in our position, so there's a lot of room for growth here. And even just up till an hour ago, it finally just started to click. So it takes a lot to understand this. So this document that you're looking at is going to be the best to help describe our school improvement plan. Our school improvement plan, which is the blue, pretty looking, really small font one, was designed with our school council. We started this process a few months ago. And you know, the school council only meets once a month. So we have teachers, admin, student rep. You heard Marcus saying he was part of it. We actually picked up another student on it a couple weeks ago, which was really incredible, and parents in the community. So we opened the school improvement plan from last year and really looked at our goals. There were some goals that we kept because it was continuing work that we were doing. So it didn't make sense to get rid of it. You know, there's a big commitment to expanding mindfulness and self-care at the high school, especially with social emotional learning. So we decided to keep that goal. So we chose new goals as well as kept some of the other ones. So for me, there's 2 things happening here. When we developed our school improvement plan, we identified 3 indicators, accountability targets that we were going to focus on. That's what the cheat sheet is in front of you. Okay, so the school improvement plan has probably changed, I'd probably say 30 to 40 times in the past few months. And everyone has really contributed. The staff has seen it. It's been shared out. Our instructional leadership team has seen it and have shared their feedback. Social workers. So it's been around the block for sure. Our second goal was establishing a curriculum cycle. And I just like to, just take a moment to thank and credit Sue Crago, because having Sue on board of our staff has been incredibly insightful and helpful to have her work and her experience in this area help move our district forward. And it's just been really nice to have Sue support our work here and has played a pretty important role in helping design some of these goals. Sue also sits on our school council. So our second goal was focused around curriculum. Our third was focused around the social emotional needs. Our fourth, this one's probably for me personally, in my role, I feel like the equitable access and inclusion for all students has been something that I've tried to focus on a lot this year through many ways. And our fifth one is improving, increasing the effective use of educational technology by students and staff. So I'm not going to go through and read all of our action steps, but understand that on the school improvement plan, it lays out action steps and how you're going to go about by meeting your goal. And then providing the evidence of that and who's responsible for it. And then on the far right, there's an acronym key in case you don't know what our SST means. It's explained to the far right. So the reason why I'm explaining the school improvement to you is because on there, the strategic objective for the district, you'll see Roman numerals. All of those are outlined above and how it ties into our district strategic plan and what those objectives are. Then you'll see the district objectives. And then to the third column to the right, or it's the fourth one into the right, is the district priority. So as a leadership team, we identified buckets over the summer, student and staff social, emotional, and physical well-being, resource allocation, parent, family, and community engagement, and designing powerful learning experiences. So with all of that being said and all those other plans, we then create our school improvement plan. So to focus in on, if you were to look through our school improvement plan, you'll see these 3 focus priorities. These are accountability targets that the state comes out with targets every year. A lot of the work that you'll see in the school improvement plan is already being done. So it may seem like it's a bit late to be talking about this. Sure, it's a little late to be talking about this, but the work doesn't go unnoticed, that these things are already in place and already happening. The first priority we identified was advanced coursework. The thing I was telling you even like an hour ago, it was literally an hour ago, still trying to understand how this ties into our school improvement plan, which is goal number 4. So if you look at the cheat sheet, you can see that it aligns right to goal number 4. Our district priorities hits all of them, 1 through 4. So in order to see where it falls, you'll be able to see that outlined in the school improvement plan. So for advanced coursework, we decided to look at a high needs population. And high needs is defined by the state as low income English language learners and special education students. And advanced coursework itself, so it's really looking at those students that are the low income EL students and special ed students that are taking dual enrollment classes, taking Project Lead the Way courses, or advanced placement courses. So for us, our accountability target for 2021, the baseline was 45.5. And for this year, it's 50.9%. So what we're looking at is of our high need students in grades 11 and 12, how many of those students are high needs, right? And taking these courses, taking AP and advanced level courses, the dual enrollment and Project Lead the Way. There's going to be some barriers and some challenges that this will present. Barriers that prevent students from accessing advanced coursework, the enrollment data, the program of studies, and we have to take a dive into the language in the program of studies and really look at that and see how we can make our program of studies more equitable. So all students, and I think you heard Marcus talking about that, right? Where if we offer a course on campus, like everyone can access that course. That's pretty incredible. We've made huge gains in this area, and that's a testament to Stephen and his work and his leadership as principal, because a lot of these things have been put in place in the past few years. So our program of studies has grown significantly. Our program of studies is updated every couple of years. So this year, as you heard Marcus say, that we're in the middle of updating it right now. I'm really excited to see the end results of this if we meet our target. I won't share the outcome or where we're at right now, but I'm really excited. Like I said, it just clicked. So thank you, Megan, for sharing that report with me. So the second focus priority was MCAS in grade 10. And you may recall we presented to all of you months ago, probably it seems, about our MCAS data. We have been making, great effort through our hours of power with our teachers, trying to come up with ways to support our students that are in categories, and you'll see this here, moving students in categories within 5 points, moving them to the next level. So what I did is, you'll see a yellow highlight with a parentheses around it, okay? This means, so we're identifying students who scored within 5 points of meeting expectations, okay? So 4 students of meeting expectations in ELA grade 10, okay? 4 students scored within 5 points that could go up to exceeds. So it would be the same for the other. So for ELA, 4 students were in partially meeting that were within 5 points that moved up to meeting. And then we looked at math grade 10. 7 students were in meeting within 5 points that could go up to exceeds. And then 5 were in partially meeting that could get moved up to meeting. So our baseline numbers for 2021 are up there. And you can see our targets are up there as well. So our targets, and you're wondering, what does 504.8 mean? That's MCAS scoring guides. I thought I had it over here. So, it is right there. Meeting expectations categories 500 to 529. So you can see with the accountability target that for ELA, our baseline was 503.3, but they want us to go to 504.8. When you look at it, you're like, that's it? That doesn't seem like a lot. We're so small. It is a lot, right? So those 4 kids is huge for us. They're huge gains. So for 2021, baseline for math is 488.2. And again, 2022 is 490. And you look at it, you're like, well, they're not, it doesn't even make the category of meeting expectations. But they're huge gains. So a small number, don't be confused by it, right, when you see it. Those small numbers mean a lot. Forgot to mention about the district priorities. Those are all, for all of them, they all hit all of our buckets. We call them buckets. Cute, they're blue. I'm sure you've seen them. So for MCAS, right, in the school improvement plan, you'll see the things that we're doing. Something we talked about before was the Acceleration Academy. We've identified in students that could benefit from attending the academy, focused and tailored to MCAS credit. Okay, we've already run a 6-week session. We are anticipating running it again. We've also, within our math department, have been creative with our course offerings to try to support students that need that extra push. My cheat sheets are in my bag, but it's okay. I have extra cheat sheets. But I think I covered everything. And I forgot to ask if you have any questions. If you want to wait till the end to ask them. Okay, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. All right. So the last one, chronic absenteeism. Probably know this one the most, and I'll take this one for Todd because Todd's really excited to talk about chronic absenteeism. But he has been doing a lot of this work already. This is something that starts early on in the school year. Okay, it's not something that we just start now. So it does tie directly into our school improvement plan. You'll see it outlined in what we're doing. This was an identified school improvement goal last year, and then I took it off. And then we put it back on. And I thought, and after some conversations with leadership, yes, it should have a place somewhere in here, but not to create all the X, Y, and Z and put things in place, because we did that in our last goal. So we have all the measures in place. It's really just monitoring it and continuing to establish interventions. So you'll see on here, we identified high needs population. again. And so what our work will be is continuing the application for attendance recovery, which is ongoing, probably daily. Because once our students hit a certain amount of absences, they're filling out the application for attendance recovery. We're having these parent meetings, like the 369-day letters are going out. We have a special COVID letter. We have our 5-day meetings, and we are revamping our ISSP, which is our individual student support plan, through our student support team. So there's a lot of work that's being redone, revamped, if you will, and monitored through chronic absenteeism. And you know this year is super difficult. The last couple years has been super difficult, you know, and last year wasn't it really a true indicator because they were remote half the year. I feel like we all didn't come back until April, and then we had 30-something kids that didn't return because they were still fully remote. So ideally, I'm excited for this to see where this goes. We broke it down from junior high to high school and what the accountability targets are for this year. I didn't put 2022, my apologies.
One thing, so the students identified as high needs is the same high needs definition as in the first column,
Yes.
but I kind of feel like it shouldn't matter what your needs are as far as chronic absenteeism. Like it should just be overall. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, if you're missing that amount of school, it should be.
It is for everyone. So
Right.
we just picked a specific group.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
So
So
accountability points for some groups as well. So you get overall what they have high needs or students with disabilities. Depending on the number of students in that category, once you hit a certain threshold, you can earn accountability points based on that as well. But if you're right, it should be both things.
So I feel like that's time for questions. And hopefully there are many, but I'm happy to answer as best as I can or defer to Todd or Stephen.
I'm sure that I should have a lot of questions, but I feel like it makes sense to me right now. So, anybody have specific questions?
My only question was around the chronic absenteeism where it says the 6.4% for the accountability target baseline. I guess in what context is that what the current absenteeism is, or is it 9.3%? Am I gathering that right?
From the 2021 baseline, the baselines come out, yes.
That's the current, and then the 2020.
2021 was the 2020.
To 2021, and then the other one is 21 to 22. Okay.
The targets are for the 21 and 22.
Okay.
And then for the 6.4 is for 22, 23,
21, 22,
21.
yes.
Okay.
Or, so as a 7 through 12, we get rated in 2 categories, and there's a formula where they combine the points and you get it. So we have a non-high school and high school, so our 7th and 8th grade is the non-high school, that's 6.4, and then a high school.
My only question would be the school improvement plan, all the detail, is there a way that we can get that sent to us again a little clearer to read? So we could go over at some point. I'm just really struggling. I think there's probably a lot of good stuff in here that I'd like to look over at
There's
some point.
great stuff in there.
So small.
So it's small because it was 10 pages. I can increase it.
And I just went to the Zoom.
Yeah, you can finish.
I did, but okay, maybe it's just operator error. I'll follow up after. I tried to zoom it still.
You know, so select all and make it bigger font, and you'll have 127 pages, but you can read it.
Yes. So it was really, yes, I changed it. So it was only about 5 pages or whatever it is,
Gotcha.
because it's barely. Yes, it was really long, and now I'm upset because it went on the last page, and it shouldn't have been, so I'll change it even smaller for you.
Okay, never mind, I can figure it out.
Yes, and I don't think you have edit rights to it, so you might not be able to do that, but
You can save it, make your own.
you can make a copy of
I
it.
think we actually did, because I accidentally added a whole bunch of numbers. So
Thank
then I
you.
fixed it.
I
So
appreciate that.
you're welcome.
Yeah, it looks like, you can move around some stuff.
Yeah.
I may have just done it too, but-
Oh,
And
great.
then all the targets.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
Oh, my God, my heart's fluttering. What did you just do?
I don't think, someone highlighted it, but I don't think it's me.
No, here's Ally.
Ally highlighted.
I'm trying to make it bigger for everyone, but my computer is.
We're
I'm gonna
good.
get out of
We're
here.
good, I know.
I
I'm
know.
gonna see it. Yeah, I'll have my own copy of it. I love PDFs. Yeah,
Great.
Megan's got me on that one. All
And
right,
again, I
thank
just
you.
want to thank the school council, Sue, for being instrumental, and Todd. Really, every time I was like, Todd, I need to sit down with you and talk. It's not, it's really important to have a team, to do this work. So I really appreciate everyone's effort and so grateful for all the parent contributions, the students. They have great things to say. So when you dive into the school improvement plan on Sunday night, really, if you have questions about it, please feel free to reach out, because I could have missed something. There's a lot in there, and it's definitely not something that you can read in 5 minutes. Okay, it captures, a lot of great things that are happening in the school.
So Ally, I just want to comment and say, there are things kind of across the board, top to bottom, up and down, that I think are great. And the way that you tried to capture it in a, kind of, I know it's small, but easy to read in sequential format, I really appreciate as well. So thank you for doing that, and listing everything out and trying to capture everything so that it was easy to understand. If there were kind of questions on acronyms, it was there and all in kind of one document. It's just, I really appreciate the format and the depth of everything included here.
And that will answer any question.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any, and I didn't think that there's no line in here about who the contributors were to the school council. Maybe I'll add an extra page. No, do that at the bottom, because I really think it needs to live somewhere in there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Bill, are you there? There.
Well, it should be,
Oh, he's coming in. And not on
You there, Bill?
Can you hear me?
We can. Hi, Bill.
Hey, everyone. Thank you. I apologize I couldn't be there, just had some family commitments today. What we did on our slide presentation was kind of just go through an overview for you of what our school improvement plan looks like. I will submit the complete plan to you for your actually before your next meeting. Stephen can forward it to you and put it in your folder with all of the columns and pretty much everything that Ally was talking about. It's real easy to read. It has the focus area, the goals, the strategic objectives, the district objectives, and the action steps. It's the same thing we do every year. And you'll have that to look through as well. What this slide presentation does is just takes an overview of that and shows everybody what we're working on and where we're at. And again, a lot of it was changed based on the accountability targets that the state just sent out to us within the last month. So, we've realigned things, we've moved things around. We're still working on the same objectives, and being in the middle, still in the middle of COVID and being in elementary school, it looks a little different than high school in a way. A lot of these things are targets that we're aligning for everybody. So if you want to go to the next slide, Stephen, please. So chronically absent is one of the top accountability targets that the state has asked us to work on. And this is something we've been struggling with for the last 3 years since COVID, with students that are absent, right? We're telling students to stay home. We're monitoring them. They can't come to school. So we're looking at this from a whole different point of view. It's not really the absenteeism. It's how we're making up that absenteeism. And the state allows us to make up that absenteeism through the absence recovery. So we're asking all the teachers to do their best to provide that work to students, to let us know when those students are making up that work. And after they make up that work, what that looks like as far as if they're not making up the work, how do we help them? Do we need to start some tutoring? Do we need to ask them to stay after school? At East Meadow, we don't have after school help sessions. There's never been after school help sessions in the teachers' contracts. In the past, they've had a homework club where the teachers have gotten paid to stay after, more like a tutoring session. So we're looking into that as well, to make sure that the students are making up the work. But we do have a few teachers that have, volunteered, and they're staying after with students a couple times a week and doing this work. So for us, we're targeting all students across the board, in grades 1 through 6, and looking at students that have missed, anything really over 6 to 10 days. Are they making up that work? We all know that there are students that can take a week off of school, go to Florida with their families, do some of the work, right, and not miss a beat. But it's the students that are chronically absent and that can't, make those pieces up. And I relate it to a puzzle. They're missing some of those puzzle pieces. And how are we making up those puzzle pieces? And how are we getting them so that we know that they're moving forward with everything that they need? So that's basically what we've done here with, the chronic absenteeism. Next slide, please. It's taken directly from the DESE accountability, and they're telling us that, students that are chronically absent, 8.5% of the school enrollment in grades 1 through 6, that's our chronic absenteeism rate. They're looking at that as students that are missing 10% of the days. So if it's 180 school days, it's 18 days in the year. Well, for us, 18 days is still a lot, right? We want to target those students far sooner than that. So if they're missing 10 days, we want to make sure they're making up the work for those 10 days, and that we're making sure that they're staying current. That's the big piece, is just making sure that everybody's staying current and looking at it from that point of view. Like I said, it's really hard, especially at the elementary level. We were hit hard with COVID cases outside of school and students having to quarantine and stay home. So we're just going to continue to work on this, and we're going to hopefully, make sure everybody is where they need to be by the end of the year. Next slide. This just shows in 2021, our chronic absenteeism rate was 323. So the baseline for that is 10.2 for last year. So this year they want us to be at 8.5%. And like I say, we worked hard last year, and it was difficult during COVID, but our goal this year is to make sure that, we don't have 8.5% of our students missing 18 days or more. We're working on that now. We've been working on that since the beginning of the school year. Next slide.
But, yeah.
The next goal is designing powerful learning experiences leading to improvement in student achievement. This is where we're analyzing those MCAS results. I didn't get into the weeds, like Allie did here, I can get you that data as far as what that exactly looks like, but a lot of what we're doing also revolves around the DIBELS and the IXL testing for the math and reading language arts for students in K through 6. They're being, assessed 3 times a year. We're just going through that second assessment period now. So we're going to be able to look at that data and look at that growth, and we're going to be able to use that to hopefully target students that need some individual remediation or catching up in some areas, and then be able to, that'll help us as far as meeting those MCAS results. Another thing that we've done this year is implement writing across the grade levels, and Sue Crago has set up 2 writing goals for each grade level across the school, and because that was an area where our MCAS was in great need. So we're hoping combining this with the writing that we'll see the results that we need for MCAS. Again, being tough with COVID and trying to explain to families and parents and students that, yep, MCAS is just a part of this, and the DIBELS is part of this, and IXL is part of this. And as we move forward, we just want to see growth, and we want to see students succeeding. Next slide it relates directly to the district priority of designing powerful learning experiences in the curriculum, the instruction, and the assessments. And this is the bucket on the district level, and we are well within that, and we're following along with all of those targets. Next slide. This has been big at the elementary school. We talked about this with the school committee. We purchased another curriculum support for the staff after hearing their concerns and feeling that the students were so far behind social emotionally. We purchased the Second Step curriculum, and we just started that a couple weeks ago. And it's been amazing, and we'll give you an update on what that looks like and what it involves, and we put it in our newsletter every week. I've started putting a little bit in there. Teachers are also doing a little bit with that. We're going to continue to implement the Peace Builder program, the PBIS, the positive behaviors, incentives, the monthly character building assemblies, which has been great. We announce those every day. We talk about them during daily meetings, and continue the use of the mindfulness and self-care programs. This all comes together to provide the continuum support to all students so that we can ensure the students meet their individual social, emotional, academic goals. We have that through our TSS, which is our tiered system of support, and through our SET, which is our social emotional team meetings, where we can monitor this. I did include a link for you on the bottom there. If you want to click on that, it goes into further detail about the PBIS. Yeah, you can click it, Mr. Sullivan, if you want. It's just a slideshow that we presented to the staff when we started this about a month ago, after we met with them, listened to their concerns. We heard what they were saying, all the pieces that went into this. There was a lot of time. Mr. Sullivan came over and we met with each grade level and we listened and we talked about this, and all of this was in response to that. And being able to work with the staff and provide these supports. And after you look through the slide presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But this is what we did, and how we got where we were. We put the plan together. We communicated it to the staff. We communicated it to the students. The PBIS expectations rubric, you can find that in here as well. There's links to all the pieces of our social emotional plan, and I wanted you to all have access to it. And you'll know that it's in the newsletter every week as well. I have that rubric. I have the Peace Builder information and links to all of that, so families can see it as well. It's been a big part of coming back to school for us this year, and it's been a big part of what the staff has asked for. So we've in response, we put all this together, and through the help of one of our interns and with the social workers, Paige has done an amazing job with the second step and helping support the staff for this. And we do our peace builders. We are handing out praise notes. We're doing our character counts. We're making sure that, we're recognizing students for their positive behavior. This is an example of the praise note. The teachers can just fill it out with the student's name, circle what trait that they are being recognized for. That would go home with the student, and then they get to put up a die cut on the bulletin board. And once a week, we pull the die cuts down and we have them come down and pick out prizes from Mr. Taylor's prize box. This is the rubric for the PBIS and for our RAMS rubric, we call it. How to be respectful, aim high, make responsible choices, and stay safe. And all of those areas, in the hallways, in the classrooms, at recess, in the cafeteria, in the bathrooms even, and on the bus. We're in the process of making sure we can create classroom break spaces where students can take a break and take a time out if they need to, and hoping that helps self-regulate them, and working with teachers to see what they need to set up those spaces. It's a little tough when we're staying 3 feet apart to have that room, but that's what we're doing. Some of the teachers were asking, who do I call? We developed a rubric where it's very clear chart that what they can do in the classroom, what they can do for office support, and we're taking a step further and adding for the students that have social worker support as well. This has some of the information, the second step, dates. What we did was we created a calendar where the lessons are being presented, what days the lessons. Every Wednesday, we're doing Diesel, we call it. It's drop everything and social emotional support. And we have set up a calendar so that on Wednesdays at 9:45, we have kindergarten, first and second grade doing their lessons. And at 11 o'clock, we have grades 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the reason we set it up this way was that we can go in and we can visit the classrooms and we can be part of this. Mr. Sullivan comes over, Megan comes over, Sue comes over, and we're in the classrooms. The social workers are in the classrooms. It allows us the chance to be able to go in and be part of these lessons, to support the students, to see what's happening. It's been really well received by the students in the first 2 weeks. And we have a calendar of the supports that we're doing for the staff as well, for our staff meetings and hours of power, so that they have time to prepare this, so that we didn't just throw it at them. That's it for that presentation. And then if you go to the next slide here, it goes to how this relates to the district priority of student and staff social, emotional, and physical well-being. One of my goals for the last couple of years has been to develop a tier 1 social emotional support. And the second step is something that we talked to the teachers about. We had a couple options that we presented, and it just seemed like second step. It's a 10-minute presentation kind of, but there's supplemental things that they can do. Some teachers are taking a half an hour, some teachers are taking 45 minutes with their lessons and really getting into it. But it focuses right along with the district priority of social emotional learning, and what we heard from the staff, that they really needed some support on this and some time to do it. And I think it's been working out great. It's been a real positive experience. Next, I think that's it.
Yep.
I could take questions, and like I said, I'll be happy to forward you the actual school improvement document that lists all of the focus areas, what the goals are. It lists out each goal and where they come from, what district objectives it comes to, and the action steps that are involved, as well as the evidence that we're going to look for, who's responsible, and the timeline.
Excellent. I would appreciate if you could send that along to us. It'd be great to have.
Absolutely.
Any questions for Bill?
Kind of. And I'm not sure if that'll be in that second document, but I know the last time we met, we talked a lot about writing being a goal, but that's not addressed in here. How we're addressing the writing. So I don't know if that would be maybe in that separate document.
It is. I alluded to it where we talked about the scores. I didn't put it on the actual slide, but it is still, it's one of our priorities as far as that MCAS. And I didn't really put in all of the targets on the MCAS. Like I said, I didn't get down that deep into it, but we are still working on the writing. Sue has presented the writing. As a matter of fact, at our team leader meeting yesterday, we did a check-in on where they're at with the writing. And a couple of our teachers went to a PD and they came back really energized. It was a writing PD, and we're gonna hopefully be able to provide them some time to meet together and then present to the faculty at the March PD day how we can incorporate what they learned at that workshop into what we're doing. And what they realized was we had done the writing focus just before COVID, and that this really ties in well with that and takes it to the next level. So we're excited to continue to work on that as well.
Thank you.
So I guess I just have a couple follow-up questions, and maybe, just like Audrey said, they are listed a little bit more specifically in the document that will be forthcoming. But I feel like when we've talked somewhat about the chronic absenteeism and things like that, there's been the definition about what it is and the concern. And I think I've asked the question before, but just kind of the more specific steps to kind of target interventions, like are there meetings happening? Are there, different supports that are going to be provided for students or their families or different things? And I don't know that I saw that here, so that's something. And just to tie that into, I guess, with the assessments that are being done with DIBELS and IXL, again, I've heard about using those assessments and looking at the data and figuring out next steps. And I would just be curious about what those next steps might look like, or what at least people would hope they might look like.
So for the attendance recovery, we do meet, like I said, so we have our social emotional team and we have our tiered system of support team, which is more academic, but both meet and students are brought forward. But we have a chart, and Mr. Taylor keeps up that chart every day with Mrs. Sapowski on what students, where the students are at. And Stacy helps with this as well, has created a follow-up chart so that as the students are making up their days, she notes it into the system, and we're keeping up with that regularly. If not on a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis. And we're right up to date with that, and we can follow up. We're reaching out to the families. The first step was to reach out to the staff and ask them to put the days in and let us know what the students have made up. We know the staff has a lot going on. We know this is one more thing we're asking them to do, fill out this chart, right, and track attendance and everything else. And they're feeling it, but they've been great about marking those days. It might not be the same day, it might not be the week, right? But within a couple of weeks, they're marking down the work that's being made up. And then we can go at, we can contact families, and we can make the next steps that we need to do that. And Mr. Taylor's been, like I said, working on that regularly with them, contacting families. The biggest piece of it is the COVID pieces of it, right? And we know why students are out. So it's more a fact of, are they making up the work, and how can we get the work to them? And a lot of it is just actually being the middle people to get that work to the office and get people to pick up the work. We've had families who we've left the work outside in the boxes because the families have all been quarantined. So they'll come by after hours and pick up the work, or have somebody else come pick up the work and complete the work and then send it back when the students come back. That's been one of the biggest pieces, is having to tell kids, right? No, even if a student isn't, showing any symptoms, you have to stay home, and I know when I had, my bout with COVID, I had no symptoms at all. I wouldn't have even known I had it, except that I had, tested because a family member had tested. So I tested and I was positive, but I didn't have any symptoms at all, except for maybe an occasional sneeze. So it was odd for me, right, to have to stay out of school. I work remotely, but that's what we're dealing with, is telling kids they have to stay home. So yeah, there's a lot of pieces in that. That's in that document. You'll see a lot of the meetings are addressed in there and things are addressed in there. And as far as the assessments, the next step with that after we get this is going to be giving the staff time to look at them. We want to talk about it. We want to look at what the growth is. We want to celebrate what the growth is in there. And I really want to sit down with the students and I want to set goals. We had done this a couple of years ago. We had a goal setting with the students about what they could do to target their goal and what they could look at. So I want the teachers to sit down with the students and look at the assessments and let them know what it looks like, like, oh, great, you scored this. Look, you made this much growth in math. Or, if you answered one more question, you could have done this. And that relates to the Mcas as well. We have a number of students that are on the cusp from one category to the other, and we're targeting that. We're looking at that, and we're trying to get them to understand, just reread one question or redo one question and try to do that. So those are the next steps with that. And that's all been spelled out and it's in that document. And, we've talked with the staff about it, and hopefully we can, see some growth as we look at these and celebrate that. But if we don't, then there's room for growth there too, right? Why aren't we seeing growth? What is it? Is it because the student's been chronically absent? Because they do fit together. And, our hope is that we can get all the students assessed, even with the number of students that have been absent. Our daily absenteeism rate has cut in half actually over the last 2 weeks. So we're back down where we were. We were a bit higher couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, right after we came back from break and whatnot. And now we're heading back down there, and it's good to see. So we can focus more on these things.
Thank you.
I just real quick have one question. Was this improvement plan created by administration? Was there a school council, similarly to what Ally was saying, made up of teachers and parents and all of that? I was curious if school council is happening at East Meadow right now with community members, if that's something you're looking to get going again or need involvement with. I was just curious.
Yep, we have a school council. Unfortunately, we've had, our parents have not been able to come to the last 2 school council meetings, even virtually, because 2 of the families were very, very sick. We've reached out several times for volunteers. It's a little harder, I think, at the elementary level because parents are a little busier and, not able to make that commitment. But we're might be reaching out again to replace those members. A lot of these priorities were done when we had our school council, our previous school council. This is the same kind of priorities that were in there. We've just tweaked them and we've put them together. We've involved our instructional leadership team. We've talked about it with our team leaders. So we've gotten a lot of input.
Any other questions for Bill? Bill?
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, next up is our school capacity presentation. Yeah. That could be Jen Chauvin, I'm not sure, so. Yeah.
I did update the slide that is in the folder, so it's the most current one. I don't know if you can open it up and share it.
Should I just refresh it? It's the one that's in there right now?
Yep.
Take your time. Number 2.
Slide.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Titled Presentation 2. Okay. Right, I did update it in there.
So.
It did say presentation 2? Okay.
Because I didn't download it, so then.
I didn't see it on that one, that's right. Sorry, go right ahead.
No, that's okay. So, we are, pleased to be here tonight to give you guys an update on kind of the work that we've done so far for the school capacity work group. I know we spoke a little bit last time, but we really wanted to make sure that you have as many members here tonight to speak about where we've kind of come so far. But you know, I guess we're probably not done with the work that we're doing as well. So
thank you to our members that have joined us. You can see from the list here, we had several teachers, community members, Alicia Osborne, for teacher, that's Megan Slozak, parent, community member, former student. We really tried to dive into all the roles that these individuals have had over the years here in Granby. Mrs. Mansfield, a teacher and parent. Candace Ribeiro, she's a community member and former student. Joanne Healy is a parent. Elizabeth Sola, a special education teacher, also a parent. Jessica Boone, parent, community member. Mrs. Chauvin, kindergarten teacher, community member, former student. Mrs. Navarrete, Title I math teacher. Ms. Meadow, she's been here for how many years? I think she said that a couple times, 23 years, 24. I don't want to be incorrect. Mrs. Bonnie, you're senior high school administrator, former student. Myself, the committee member, and parent. And yeah.
My favorite.
So a huge thank you to all of these people. We were meeting once and sometimes even twice a month, long hour meetings, even in the evenings. So we're very thankful for the involvement from all these individuals.
And I just want to say that we have some of our community members here in person. We have some that are online tonight, and we do have a couple that couldn't make it for one reason or another. But we, you know, their commitment to our meetings and coming to go on the tours and stuff has been amazing. And it's been good ride. So Kristen's online. Kristen.
Hi, good evening. So I'm here to tell you about our meetings. So our journey began back in June. We initially met and took a tour of East Meadow School. In the months of September, October, and November, we had meetings to discuss the building usage. We generated some ideas. We threw out some questions. We reviewed some data and we engaged in open discussion. In the month of December, members, we actually had 2 sessions where we toured the junior senior high school. There was also opportunity for us to ask lots of questions and get answers. In January, we had the opportunity to sit down with Stephen and Adam, our superintendent and director of finance and operations. And then tonight we get to present to you, the school committee, about our progress and our findings. So when it comes to the data analysis and the documentation review, the committee took a look at the current and prior year building maps of East Meadows and the Granby Junior Senior High School. Sorry, I'm moving everybody. We also had an opportunity to look at census data for the next 5 years and also for the incoming kindergarten students. We were also provided with enrollment data for this current school year, which was accessible through the enrollment dashboard. We also got to take a look at the feasibility study from the MSBA East Meadow Building Project. We reviewed the current programming that we have here at East Meadow School, as well as the Granby Junior Senior High School. And finally, we reviewed previous school capacity recommendations and their concerns.
So of course, with any project like this, the financial considerations is a big piece of it. We know that with any new building in town, the big issues from the community members have always been, how much is this going to cost us? So we looked at a bunch of different items, including discussing bumping out some of the smaller classrooms at East Meadow. So as Kristen just said, we took a look at the maps and what had tours of the buildings here, and looked at, could we make some of those classrooms that are a little bit smaller into larger classrooms that could be used for those classrooms that we think we're going to need in the future. But we realized that this would require going to bid and rewiring of electrical exhaust fans, and requires just some additional maintenance work that wasn't included in the original building project. The committee had concerns that the town would not fund any additional project work at East Meadow, and that also the MSBA would not allow it. Because East Meadow is essentially new and has no requirement other than capacity issues to make such a change. The high school does have the physical capacity to bring in the additional students with limited, if any, changes to the infrastructure. All of it is already there. We are concerned that the MSBA will need to be consulted regarding a move of the 6th grade to the junior senior high school, because they were included in that original East Meadow project. We got the funding that we did based on the school going through 6th grade, and we're concerned that would any of that money have to be paid back, because we're not keeping up basically our end of the market. And then we really acknowledge that the high school is quite old, and any changes that are made to the high school will involve needs including HVAC, kitchen repair, and other renovations. So we do know that the high school is going to require some work.
Do you want me to hold my questions to the end, or can we jump in now? Jump in. Okay. First, so I'm going to try to not be flip, because that's not very helpful, but I gotta say this. Thank you, Captain Obvious, for telling me. Exactly. And then the other thing is the MSBA issue. I feel like that's one of those things that we're going to be on this carousel of going around and around with, because it's not this school. The funding was for kindergarten through 6th grade, and we have the pre-K issue. And so I'm hoping that we're going to sort of kind of address that piece at some point, because that was one of the things that we had as an issue last time. And I know that we have to offer the pre-K. I totally understand that, but that's where we've gotten ourselves into this bind about, is that we're using pre-K space that should be kindergarten and 1st grade space. So I can already feel myself getting amped up about this. But I mean, I thought that that's sort of what you guys were going to be coming back to us with, is how we're going to address those things. Because we can't get back into the same situation that we were in before. So that's kind of where I'm at, just reading this right after that, is that I don't feel like, so I've read through this whole thing. So this to me is just regurgitation of what we already knew. So So I guess I'm frustrated. I was super excited and now I feel super frustrated because I don't know where is the new part.
So let's keep going.
Okay,
We're gonna keep going, and then we're gonna dive a little deeper through discussion.
So I reached out to the town to get some census information about what the next 5 years are going to look like, because that's going to inform, I think, where, you know, is the town growing? Is the town staying relatively stable? And what you see is that based on those numbers, and I did add two because, and this is census data, so just mind you have to fill out the census to obviously be on it, and not everybody does that. So we have at this time 44 students projected to come in this fall that or they're living in town. And then you see that we have kind of a slight dip with 36 and then 29. So those will be our pre-K 4-year-olds and our pre-K 3-year-olds. Is the 29 the lowest number? And then you see a jump of 50 students that are in that 2-year-old range and 56 in that 1-year-old range. And of course, fall 2027 is to be determined as they are being born this year. And so, you know, when I reached out for this information, I said, oh, those, you know, COVID babies, like, and we saw it, I think, when we had the open houses, there were little kids everywhere. And so it just kind of confirms that there are more students or potential students in our community, and maybe our community is growing. So it's something relevant for the committee to know.
And this is based on the
Correct. And it was based at, I reached out for this information in October. And then since then we got our kindergarten, so we added 2 students who got added to the census for this upcoming school year. So.
And to clarify, these are all Granby students.
These are the Granby residents that are in these age groups that range, you know, it starts on September 1st to August 31st of each year. So I grouped them by the grade level that they would be entering with.
and that does not account, I mean, like, just like, we don't know how many COVID babies, we don't know how many new houses will be in there, how many more families will move into town and all of that. I mean, if you drive around Granby, you're seeing tons of construction, people are moving in, houses don't last very long on the market. So those are things that, again, unknowns that we don't know, but it still sort of feels like,
It's just a snapshot.
Yeah, it's a piece of data that we can use to make some decisions and to think about kind of the future. I think it is relevant to know that we have some potential bigger groups of students coming in, you know, in a few years.
So taking that census information and putting it into like how the years go through and the grade levels and how many classrooms are needed. The committee, we call this the magic number of 21. So currently right now at East Meadow School for the school year 21-22, we have 21 classrooms. So you'll see here right now, we have 1 preschool, we have 3 kindergarten classrooms, and you'll see in parentheses, that's the number of pupils that are in kindergarten. In grade 1, we have 3 with 57 students. In grade 2, we also have 3 classrooms, 56 students total. Grade 3 is 3 classrooms with 65 students. Grade 4 is 3 with 54 students. Grade 5 is 2 classrooms with 46 students. And then we have grade 6, which is 3 classrooms with 56 students. So that's 21 classrooms that are being utilized in what we have available. So then if you take that information from this year and you progress everybody to the next year, because everyone, you know, they're going to move on, kindergarten is going to become first graders, etc. We've taken that information from the census And it shows us here that based on information, we're going to need 2 preschool classrooms. And in K, we're going to have roughly about 44. We might have some students that might not be on the census or might be going somewhere else. But we potentially could need 2 to 3 classrooms. So if you look at the end of that lane, you'll notice that there's a potential for 21, 22 classrooms needed. When we get to the year of 23-24 school year, we still need to have 2 preschools, 2 kindergartens based on that census information. And the classroom that was 2 to 3 in K is now become the 2 to 3 for first grade. So we have 21 to 22 classrooms that we'll need. And our biggest bump is when it comes to the year 25, 26 and 26, 27, when K will go back up to the 3. And those other classrooms that were needed more from 2 to 3, 2 or 3, I should say, those have now extended down the lane into the upper grades.
I don't know if there's questions about this slide. This one was a big one to kind of unpack and kind of lay out.
I guess I don't know if I have a question or almost not a statement, but I just want to kind of be clear with like when we say we need like 2 classrooms in pre-K, that's we need to keep our current model, correct, of what we have right now.
So based on, right now we have 1 classroom that has 2 half-day sessions. Those half-day sessions are all but full. And we anticipate that we are going to actually need 3 half-day sessions, so which would take up 2 classrooms in theory, because we have enough students with IEPs to run an 3 integrated section programs. There's a slide in the future that kind of expands upon that, but that is something that we're aware of, and and so that's just it's another piece of information. What I just want to point out is that that kind of trending 2 or 3 as the year goes on, though it's kind of like you set yourself up for perhaps a smaller classroom for those 3 years, then you still work within that 21 classroom range, which we know we can accommodate 21 classrooms. How that, whether that's where there's a bubble, where there isn't a bubble, or where there's a smaller class, those are the things that have to be considered. And there is no, I can understand your frustration, Jen. There is no easy answer in all of this. Yeah, but we're using that relevant, what we have information now to be able to make informed decisions, so that we're able to work within what we have as much as we can. But we have to be, I think, be prepared for all the situations that could happen. I think one of the takeaways we had in our group discussion was there's a lot of what ifs here, and I think that's what makes people feel anxious about it. It's because if we had more space, we wouldn't have this conversation, but we don't, and so that's where we are. So we want to keep moving, but we want to hear, go through this a little bit more and hear how other things that you're thinking of, so that we can keep doing our work as well.
I just have one question, Megan.
Sure.
So, with the highlighted areas, even in yellow, for example, tracking them from K, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Did you just highlight kind of the potential couple of classrooms that had flexibility each year to be kind of the 2 or 3, even though there's the potential for
more, but because they're getting older, you're thinking it makes more sense at that grade to split into farther, because I'm just tracking. For example, in 2022, 23, you have 2 or 3, same in 23, 24, 2 or 3, same in 24, 25, then all of a sudden in 25, 26, it just jumps to 3. So I'm assuming maybe there was some discussion around that at that point, they're older, they need 3 classrooms, and you can adjust
I see that
backwards.
now. That might
Or
have,
was that a mistake?
that might have been a potential that needed to be highlighted. Do you see it, Megan?
Yep, they do. Well, so, you know, I guess that's my question, was it?
Oh, I see. It's,
Yeah.
so there is one error.
No, it's a
And that
formatting.
is on the 25, 26, the first 2 or 3 needs to be on the right side of the other 2 or 3. So
Okay,
it would be
so it-
second and third grade. Is that right?
It would be under third grade, 25, 26, it should still be 2 or 3.
There just needs to move over one.
Everyone needs to be dressed,
Yeah.
adjusted over one.
Should, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
It should just track each.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked right when
Yeah.
when we
It
had
is hard. And basically what we were finding was it's really up to us when we're making those choices about, you know, school choice. Do we want to make it stay small? It really becomes a discussion for us to have. Like, what do we want that class size to look like? What do we want those numbers to look like? You know, can we make it work for a few more years going this way? But knowing that we don't want to end up in this train where we're like, all right, 6 months, we need to make a decision, because that's not going to go over well with everybody either. But that there is potential for thoughtfulness looking at it. So. Yeah, there's some books.
No, that's fine. I just didn't know if there was some kind of discussion about whatever, or if it just was a one.
That's the part where it's like, the school capacity group can't really make that decision, that's an us decision.
So I'm going to review some of the potential impacts for the fall of 2022. So based on the census data that we have, students entering kindergarten age is 44 students. So one part of that is that may not include families who didn't complete the census data. And then the other part of that is how that would impact the school. So of the 44 children, Granby residents that we have, not all of them typically come to kindergarten. Some stay at Children's First, may choose other programs, may school choice, may have homeschool or private school. So that's the raw number. We don't have kindergarten enrollment yet, so that'll be firmed up a little bit later. So that's one of the challenges the group faced, is trying to project some things that are unpredictable, because there is data that we can't control at the moment. So then preschool enrollment projections indicate the need for a second, as Megan was just talking about, that we have some students, 7 with IEPs, 8 peer role models. So that would give us a sections of 15 students. If we maintain the 2 sections, 1 a.m., 1 p.m., preschool, only 3 full-time slots between the 2 sections. It doesn't allow for move-ins, referrals, early interventions, parent referrals at age 3. Minimum of 3 sections is required for next school year. And then we're anticipating no other programmatic changes for the upcoming school year. I don't know if there's any questions on that, or are we?
You sort of say like, that we had, you know, just to expand on that preschool piece, and, you know, we had 14 students on our wait list to join preschool this year, so, you know, there's a need for, you know, families in the community who have access to early childhood education, that, you know, those are the students that are not identified, but, you know, I think there is something to be said about, you know, having those opportunities. So this would allow for more peers, more kids to be prepared for school, which in turn could have a bigger impact long term on our, our accountability data that we talked about and, outcomes for kids. Because, the earlier you start, the more you're likely to. So even though this is about full capacity, it also talks to some of the other pieces of this that get intertwined when we make decisions around what students.
I guess that's where a lot of my questions stem from, because I understand the need and it's obviously there, but so is fitting all of the kids in the building. So I kind of was hoping to see maybe models that we've used in the past, or like what it looked like when there was only one class. Is it the same type of program we have now, or was it different? What's changed? What's required versus what we want to have? Just for the meantime, I think that those are a lot of differences. I mean, not that I want to go backwards whatsoever, but it really wasn't that long ago, Granby, you paid for kindergarten as a resident. Like that happened. Like, not that we want to go there, but to talk about like just the options of what things looked like if we're in, to work within our means. It'd be nice to kind of see where we were or if there are any options other than the inevitable.
I think we can explore those things in future, work group meetings too. We wanted to give you an update because we haven't been able to share. And so I think that's other things that we can do.
I'll continue with implication. Oh, outstanding. I'm gonna.
Sorry. So I was going to take over with implications, things that we were thinking about in the future. So considering the enrollment trends, the district may be able to maintain current grade level arrangements at East Meadow for the next 2 to 6 school years. But saying that, it also means that class sizes may increase. And this goes right back to the magic numbers 21. So I think what Audrey was saying previously, like that we're presenting this information, and that is something that can be looked at, but it's a pro and con of what you choose to go towards, the class size or keeping the classrooms. The 6th grade class of 2023-24 school year may need to be moved to the junior senior high school. That's just an observation that we saw based again on the 21, magic number is 21. If East Meadow can continue pre-K through 6 for the next 6 school years, then there's a possibility that 6th grade or even preschool could be included in the MSBA project that is being explored for the junior senior high school. That was a big what if for the group. We kept going back to what if the junior senior high school is accepted into that project, then could preschool potentially be rolled into that project? What if or when will preschool become something that's mandated, and would that change things? But as a group, we focused on only the information we had. That's why this is under the implications, because these are all possibilities. Regardless preparation for the contingency of moving grade 6 should be thoughtfully planned ahead of time, which should include stakeholder involvement. A big key takeaway for us was whether or not 6th grade is moved or another solution is decided on, it needs to be done very thoughtfully and with stakeholder involvement, so that it's not just, we need to go ahead and do this, but it's something that's been planned out carefully.
I guess I'm back up again. So further data collection. So what we identified in our work group is to monitor census data, kindergarten enrollment, and other high number grades. If there's people moving in, any of the changes that may occur. monitor the long-term financial impact on school choice loss if we are reducing school choice seats, revenue and impact on overall operating budget, MSBA financial implications for the creation of a middle school model, grade 6 through 8 at the junior senior high school, and then ways to get stakeholder input into which directions the school committee may go.
So, you know, based on where we are right now, I think one of the biggest impacts, and especially coming from I think the group as a whole, we struggled with trying to make any physical changes to a building that was newer when we had a building that was in need of repairs. I mean, I think that's really, you know, town taxpayers are going to want to see that building be, you know, updated over, you know, bumping out a wall or changing a classroom. And I think that's something reasonable. And the committee felt, you know, that that was a big piece of information that needed to be addressed. And then, you know, the MSBA for the junior senior high school, I know that's something that we're talking about, but that is a long-term, you know, solution to a variety of issues that we have. We need to continue to kind of move in that direction, but recognize that it's not a definite and we don't have a timeline right now for any completion. You know, we talk about universal preschool. That is still something to think about. We don't have anything solid that says you must provide preschool to students, but if that does come down at some point as a recommendation or a requirement, that, you know, that's gonna have other implications that might have implications for the MSBA, that might have implications for the town as a whole. But surely with the pandemic, that has been brought to the forefront on getting students in earlier and getting them support, you know, not afforded the same opportunity that those that have, you know, young students at that time. With regards to the preschool being possibly included in the MSBA project, you know, it hasn't been funded. We talked about preschool not being funded in this project. We wonder if any universal pre-K could lead MSBA to allow that to happen. You know, or if there's other factors involved, it may be worthwhile to include that as part of a project for the town, but it would be up to the town to make the decision to approve, you know, to approve that part. We talked about expanding smaller classrooms into bigger ones. We just felt like that wasn't really the direction that we needed to go, because we still need those smaller classrooms at this time to house some of our in-district specialized programs, which have grown over the years since we've moved from out of West Street School. So, you know, one of the things I think that the school committee and the administration can control is school choice and being really thoughtful about that, but just recognizing those the implications, obviously, for our financial implications as well. That's it. So those are that's where we are right now.
The last one also talks about that it could go either way though.
Say it again?
The last one, finish reading what it says, because we also do realize that even a move of 6th grade could have implications on school choice as well, or school choice and all. So we recognize those aspects.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, I want to get some more information about the previous MSBA project. You know, I hear that thing, there may have been more classrooms at one point. This is not, there's no like that were not included in the project at the end. So there's some kind of things floating out there in the community that needs more,
thoughtful, understanding and maybe even a conversation with MSBA and say like, well, what if we did this? Because that, I think we want to know is that gonna hurt the town, hurt the, with regards to, having to return money or things like that, if the decision was that we did have to move sixth grade over. Thoughts, questions?
So I'll say something.
Sure.
I will say that I can appreciate the work that's been done. I didn't come here expecting to have any solutions kind of brought forward about one particular direction over another, because I feel like there were, the last time around this happened, there were lots of ideas, thoughts, recommendations, and things thrown out at the various opportunities that were presented. And I do think people were listening. I don't know that there was the time that could be spent to kind of go down the avenue of like fully investigating like all of those pieces. But I do think that they were heard. So I feel like this was not a wasted effort at all. And I feel like the information that was brought forward is helpful because it will allow this committee some outside perspective and guidance and kind of how to continue moving forward so that decisions here aren't also kind of made in a vacuum. So it's almost like there's an advisory committee to the school committee and ongoing that can offer some other perspective, and still pull in all of that kind of collaborative effort so that nobody loses sight of community members, parents, students, faculty, staff, everybody, and kind of moving forward on this very big decision that has to be made for, the students in essence. So this is a lot of information. Some of it, yes, I think we've heard before. Some of it I think is things that we have to consider. And it's timely because we do have school choice information coming up. We do have, enrollment that we're constantly looking at. And, we have to be thoughtful about all of these pieces, not that we haven't before, but even more so now as we go forward. And without thinking about all these pieces kind of together as the big picture, I think it's easy to lose sight of it. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that put their time and effort into this. And, just know that obviously there's still a lot of work to be done. And I thought I heard you say, Megan, that there's going to kind of be continued effort with this group.
Yeah, I think we're taking our direction a little bit from you guys because we can explore, a variety of options, but I think having that variety, like all those stakeholders together talking about a really complicated problem, and I don't think we even knew all the little, it's a jigsaw puzzle, because you want to, if your goal is to have one thing happen, it means, your other things are going to have to be, there are going to be concessions in other ways, and not all of those concessions are necessarily good for the town or good for, that's good for you guys as a committee, like that could pose other kind of political challenges, things like that. So we really wanted, that's why I think having that variety of people on the group was really important. And we had to get them up to speed. Some people hadn't been in this building yet. Some people hadn't been to the high school since they had, kids there. Or they haven't had kids yet. They really didn't get to know, what the art room looked like and how, some of the quality of the material, it was really relevant to spend that time, but it's really intensive, to do all that work and, make that commitment. So, like I said, we're not done, but we felt like this is where we are. Maybe we're not as far along as you would like, Jen. You know.
Well, I feel like a Grinch because I certainly don't want to degrade all the time and effort that everyone put in. I had hopes in my head, and it's really on me that apparently the charge that I had in my head of what you guys were supposed to be doing is not at all what you were doing. So I thought you were taking all of the ideas, all of that we had expounded on, you know, in a very verbose fashion over several million hours of meetings and correspondence and things. You were going to take some of those and flesh some of that out. One of the things we had talked about at length, ad nauseam, was pretend that none of the rooms are assigned in this building and walk through and give us a different perspective of how we were going to use those rooms. We were going to talk about what and have some fleshing out of what are we actually required to do in the world of pre-K. Because there's this debate about we are required to give certain types of services. We are not necessarily obligated to have full-time, full-day, full program instruction. We are not necessarily required to offer full-day kindergarten. So if we go back to a half-day kindergarten model, that was something else that was brought up as one of those options. What does that look like? If we do that, does our classroom structure help? I thought we were going to have some in-depth information on what, if we go to like this middle school model, what do we need to get those pieces in place? What do we actually need for furniture? What do we actually need for curriculum? What do we actually need from MSBA? So in my head, when we're talking about this capacity committee, those were the things that I thought we were charged with and we were going with. So that's why I've been so pumped, because I thought we were going to be getting some of these beginning building blocks. And I understand that we as the committee make the decisions, but you were our extra hands and arms and legs and eyes to do some of that background work. And so it's really on me, because that was apparently not even close to clear.
Well, Jen, to jump in really quick, we did discuss a lot of those things you're talking about, especially with preschool and kindergarten, but at the whole time, our goal is also thinking about what is in the best interest of students. So while we had discussions about the preschool, limitedly, not a ton, but we did discuss that part too. Is that dropping classes and just minimally giving, is that in the best interest of students? So how much time are we going to devote into going down that track of, is that worth it? If you want us to, we definitely can.
I just think it's one of those things that I feel like it's certainly not, to be clear, this is not what I'm saying, it's not a direction. It's just those were the things that we were getting peppered with from the community. I could not walk down a field sideline. I could not go to any kind of event where people weren't coming up to me and like, well, what about this? And what about that? People were sending us emails, people were coming to meetings, and everyone had an idea. And I thought all of those ideas had been captured, and that's what you guys were going to be going through and kind of looking at and doing some of that extra research. And it feels like, to me, I feel like I'm still at the starting point. Like, I don't feel like there's a ton of excellent work here, but there really doesn't feel to me like there's a ton of new information. So you guys have been working since June of this year, or June of last year, June of 2021. And so now I knew that this was a hugely impactful project. And I thought we would be able to be to the point where we could start to talk seriously about options. And I don't think that we're anywhere near that. And you were trying to give me that heads up in the last meeting, because I was like, woo, we are good. And I don't know that we are ready. And it's not anyone's fault, because it lives in my head that we had this ready to go. So I am super appreciative of all of the work, and I'm glad that people, I also thought that this committee was going away. Like, I thought you guys were doing this amount of work, coming and presenting and just being big. So I'm thrilled to know that you guys are all still on board. I think I would like to get you guys on the agenda, you know, at least once a quarter, so we can be updated rather than it going for so long, because ultimately, this isn't our court, and I understand that, truly, I get, this is a monumental decision that the school committee and the school district needs to make, how we're utilizing this building, and there's a ton of moving parts that do not necessarily directly are not impacted by what you bring to us. And we have to keep in those minds about the decisions about what to do, what's best for the student, what's best for the community. I totally understand that. But I was hoping that we were going to have some of that information to start compiling that. And I know I sound like such a nasty wench, and I don't mean to. I'm just fired up about this.
No,
And I see you, Andrea, on there, just give me 1 minute.
yeah, and I just wonder if it's something that might help, just for clarity, if there was maybe either a quick slide or something that just showed like discussion items or something, just to highlight areas that were discussed and maybe like not great for students or ruled out or whatever it is, just to highlight areas so that you don't have questions, or we can feel comfortable as a committee saying, this committee, you know, this capacity committee did discuss these options and they weren't viable in the best interest of students or something.
And I think I would say too, like, this is an opportunity to bring those things up, and that was part of, I think, being able to have people here. So anyway, I want to defer to Andrea.
One more second, Andrea, and just at the same time, just like this is a big decision for us to give the information, it's also not your call to completely eliminate it. Like, those, sure, the things that you guys go through and discuss, that's for us to make the final call, us as a committee, the 5 of us, to make the final call on what you're not going to go for. And some of those are going to be very, very easy to eliminate. But if you guys are having that discussion and there's data to support that decision, that should be part of what we're seeing. Because otherwise, to me, and maybe I'm the fool, but to me, those ideas that are still floating around, that people were coming forward, that still looks like we didn't discuss or we didn't do. You guys have been tasked with doing that discussion. So if you have had a very simple discussion where you're like, this was the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard, then give us a few bullet points so we can then say why this is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, so we can eliminate it. And then there's not any question to the community at large that we haven't turned over every stone to look at every possible option. Otherwise, it looks like we haven't done all of that. And maybe we as a committee need to do that. But if you guys are advisory committee and doing this work, then that's where some of that stuff needs to happen.
Okay, I'm just gonna politely push back a little bit. Then what is their purpose? Because if you're saying you want them to give you every possible viable option that could exist out there so that we can then debate them all, then what are we expecting them to do? Because that's ultimately what I think they did. They provided some possible options to consider based on the discussions that they had at the group. I'm not done yet. So they had these options to consider as a group that they presented to us. They're not final outcomes. They're not decisions that, like, recommendations that we could say A, B, C, D, done, right? Like, I get that. And maybe they're not even something that ultimately is the final decision. But if we're going to sit here and then kind of go back and then say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And they are saying the things they talked about.
Well, respectfully,
they're doing this.
Respectfully though, Joe, we don't know what they discussed.
Which is why I said maybe they can highlight areas so that we feel comfortable saying the committee did discuss this. But then I don't understand then why we then have to rediscuss it and rehash it out. If there's something of merit, fine, bring it up and have that discussion. But like, why are we then going back and forth? If we task them with this goal, why do we have to not trust that this group of people?
It's not an issue of trust, and that perhaps I misspoke. But regardless, Andrea, please go ahead.
I guess I would just like to clarify for myself, if there's a specific thing that we're looking at, or if there's a specific area that the school committee, not right now tonight, but in the next few weeks, month, whatever, says, we would like you to remove this option from the table, then we could do that and then move forward with some other things. But we did go through so many what ifs, and I was probably the biggest what ifer in that group. And we had to, at the end of the day, say, what do we know right now? What can we present to the school committee right now in order to help them see what we see? And I feel like that's what that data in front of you is showing. Now, we did discuss the preschool, we did discuss kindergarten. We could go back and highlight those points, absolutely. But if at the end of the day, there's options or points that are off the table, then I think that would be important for us to know as well. So that we could pull everything together. Because it was like Jen said, it's going to be up to the school committee to determine what is going to happen. And we were just trying to give a full picture of what we were seeing every day in the building. And I looked at it from two different lenses, as a parent and as a teacher. And those lenses are different. And I tried to incorporate those things in as well. So I just think it's important to look at the big picture and see that we were trying to present the school committee with data that is current, immediate, and based solely on information we had. There's so many what ifs, and we could go round and round with them, but then the presentation wouldn't be valid because we don't know the answer to the what ifs. That's all. Because we did put a lot of time and effort into this.
There's so much information here. And I know you guys have been meeting for 9 months. That's an incredible amount of time. And I'm not trying to diminish that. I think everyone is very appreciative. And I'm just a Grinch, really, I guess. And I apologize.
So,
I'm
so, couple things. So, on one hand, thank you so much to the committee. I know the time and effort that has been put into this. And you were tasked with, in some ways, an impossible task. And to your, I don't think you're being a Grinch where I want to take some ownership of that. I think back to when I called Audrey, and when I called Megan, and my, I would say, primary objective, based on the feedback that I heard from this school committee or previous school committees, the community, was that we did not take a transparent approach last time. So by involving these different stakeholders, that was certainly one of my primary objectives. And I didn't anticipate or ask Megan or Audrey to find a new option or an option that we might like better, or we might, so I do own part of that because I wanted this to be transparent. I wanted different stakeholders to be involved. I did not want it being me and Megan and Todd and Allie and Bill showing up at a meeting and saying, we've got this problem, here's the solution, right? So I want to own part of that, and I'm happy to work through that with either committee, both committees. The other thing that I'm hearing, a couple of quick ideas, if the school committee as a whole or the school committee as individuals, Andrea started going on this a little bit. She talked about eliminating options. What I would like to say is if there's specific options that you would like to see more information on, I think now is the time, because this is why we wanted to share the update at this time. So questions could be asked. The committee can go back, explore them a little bit more, but if there's a certain potential scenario that you would like more information on, now is probably a good time to do that. The other thing that I think about, right, as I think it was Kristen presented the slide about January, is Adam and I had the opportunity to go. I think Jen and Stephanie and Jen and Jill should also be afforded that opportunity to attend a committee meeting if they want, so they can see. I think some of the things that I experienced in that hour meeting were eye-opening to me, to say like one parent at one point made a comment right? We keep going down this path, but about space, but we have a place that has space, even though it's not the preferred space, right? Like, so it's like they're articulating those things, and if I didn't hear it myself, I might have had some of those same questions. So that might be another opportunity. Those are just two things that I thought about through the discussion. And I understand, right, the position that and the pressure that the five of you feel certainly, and I feel it as well. But I want to continue to, like, as we think through this, and the meeting I was in January, this meeting, I think of like all these different options that are way outside the box sometimes, but if people want to talk them through, I'm happy to talk them through, right? Like rotating, like using our schedule different to rotate people in and out of classes. Logistically, is that going to look like great on the master schedule? Probably not. Could we make it work? Probably, but for how long? That's sustainable. I think those are the questions that we would have to start digging deeper into. So I want to take some ownership for that. I really, when I talked to Audrey and Megan, it was about the perception that in the past, this information, this challenge got presented to the community with a solution, and the community didn't feel prepared or feel like they had enough information to just eat that solution. And
also the solution was not well thought out. I mean, every question that came up had a solution. I know I can point to Megan, I know I can point to Audrey, to Jill, because they sat in there, every question that was raised, and I just looked through about this is, okay, East Meadow's full. That means all the furniture is being used. And we know the high school is not new and sparkly anymore, and we have a room of misfit desks. Is that what we're gonna put our sixth graders in? Like, what about curriculum, right? Those are the things that we've heard before, and, but that was never itemized out. So there is, regardless of how it might look, there is not a zero cost option. Or we're not just gonna magically move sixth graders or preschoolers across the driveway without there being a financial implication. And it doesn't matter, how we do that, because there's gonna be, we had talked about previously that there's a changing curriculum now, because now we're moving to sixth grade, and there was a whole big thing that the curriculum that we're using now is being shared and whatever. So those are the things. And Jill, your idea of a slide with all of these options is right, and I think I just need to process that, but I don't want to have any idea 100% off the table until I see where some of that conversation went. Like,
Well, and to jump into one other thing that, you're sharing how a community membership, another thing that kind of happened too through the process of people said, I feel like we're spinning our wheels. Like at some point the last time, it was also a matter of like, all right, we need to do this now. And it felt so rushed and unprepared that we also don't want it to feel that way either. So this is trying to share with us that we could have a few years that we can sustain, but we also could not have a few years that we need to sustain. So at the same time, this committee can keep meeting and keep diving deeper into all the what ifs. But at the end of the day, we also need to have some serious conversations, look at the data that is current and in front of us that we do know, and kind of make a decision. And that's why we have that one slide of, we need to have a plan of what we're kind of looking for. What are our values? What do we want class sizes to look like? What do we want? But we kind of need to do a little bit of the digging too, because we're the ones that make the decision. So while we can keep digging for this magic solution or for further answers, we also need to be having a conversation at the same time about what and how is that going to look. Because a plan needs to happen, and that has to come from us rather than through this committee, unless we want the committee being like, all right, this is your answer, which is not what we want. It's not going to be over well either. So I think like meeting on it regularly, yes, but it needs to be a this discussion, not necessarily, we can continue to dive deeper behind the scenes and provide feedback or information that we discover or find, but our discussion needs to happen here.
right, and I thought that's what I was saying, that's why the committee doesn't get to rule rule something out, they can give us the information so that we can then have it on record that these things were.
But the things that we ruled out were the what ifs. So like, what if we change the programming? Okay, well, does that change what we have right now? I mean, but again, like, we're gonna have that
Okay,
discussion,
so-
is that in the best interest of students?
I think we can go around and around about this certainly, and I don't mean or want to do that. But I think already there's a disconnect about, because I am not being eloquent enough to get how this is working. So I'm gonna give myself the action for the next meeting to be able to clarify how it is that I'm perceiving this, because I'm beyond being understood at this point.
And if you, and you've been saying it right along too, if there are specific things, like letting us know. So I wrote down, as you were right, you know, previous pre-K programming, what would it look like? What is the actual pre-K requirements? Like, you know, I'm writing this down too, but at the same time, if there are other specific things you want us to dive into, let us know.
So my biggest thing, and I appreciate everyone's time they put into this, and they've done so much, is first of all, again, I thought that this was, you know, kind of the end of this committee. So if it's not, did you guys talk to everyone who's in it? Do they want to continue going down this path? Because it is so many hours and it is really involved. Like, did you run that by people? I know that some people wanted to be involved who weren't able to be because it was already full. Did we go down that avenue so we are getting all answers, especially if this is continuing? I just want to make sure that before we're just like, oh yeah, you guys are going to keep meeting, like some of these people.
That was discussed whether this was an ending point, and we said we would have to see what happened after this presentation, whether or not it would continue. So I'm assuming that we'll make that obviously a discussion. And if there are members that leave, we did have some members that had bowed out earlier on. We discussed to be bringing a new person at this point, but then it became like, we're this far in at this point, let's see where we already are.
Just to keep it fresh and saying that we want involvement and then turning certain people away who want to be involved. I just struggle that I want to make sure that if this does keep meeting, are we going to do bigger focus groups? Are we going to allow different ideas at some point down the road so that we don't say,
so
you know.
my trick question to you on that is big focus groups and things like that. I think that that's an us thing.
Well, then that's where I want, like, then I think that we as a committee, us, need to have a clear objective of what our expectations of this subcommittee is so that we can all be on the same page.
That's just going back to what I just said. I'm giving myself the action for our next school committee meeting to kind of flesh out my thoughts and perceptions, and actually I'm gonna give everybody.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're not alone in that. Don't feel like you're.
With everyone in action, with the exception of Audrey, because I feel like she's done enough on this and that she's up to her eyeballs in it. But for the remaining members of the committee, and Stephen, I'll give it to you as well, how we see the use of this committee and what everyone's initial thoughts of what it was and what our expectations are going forward, so that we can make sure that we're not wasting everybody's time, and that how and what we're thinking is actually a feasible idea. Does that make sense? Does that seem doable and feasible?
I just want to make sure that we're really considering and remembering the fact that we all need to talk about it too.
So we can only talk about it at this.
Correct.
In this forum.
Yes. No, yes, of course.
So,
but I mean, like, on the agenda going forward, whether it's our next meeting or the meeting after, like, what are some of the ramifications of some of these? What do we find important? Like, it needs to be like serious discussion on the agenda.
So I have maybe a suggestion, just to make it easier for both groups. If we come up with a topic of like what we actually, just sitting here, I was just thinking of a couple of things, and send them an email asking them to research, give them some time to do the research, and then come back, give us the information. Yeah, and then be able to have that discussion. Because, I mean, to go out there and have a very broad issue to talk about and to put it down into a very fine tooth comb of what are we going to do when there's so much information out there.
And time constraints. So that's where we have to be watching of the timeline.
Right.
This process is going through.
But even by doing that, my concern is we're gonna have a header. You guys are gonna bring something to us and we're essentially gonna rehash every piece of that and we're gonna end up in a cycle that I certainly don't wanna be
And that's what
in.
Jill was saying, and that's a very valid point.
Because when,
But at the
But the thing is if they're researching a topic and then bringing it to us and then we have a discussion on it, it's not them like having the discussion on it, like actually finding the information and then presenting that and then us having a conversation about it.
I'm just having like some weird deja vu, and I know a lot of people were part of this committee, but we had, I'm just gonna go down here, I didn't want to. We met as a health and safety committee for how long? I know Stephen, Megan, Todd. We spent hours and hours and hours, and we thought we'd come up with this great stuff. We'd bring it to school committee, and it was like, wow, like, it just went a total different direction. And we as a committee, I know many of us talked about saying, I almost wish we were relieved sooner because maybe our avenues changed a bit, like our objective changed. I just want to make sure that that doesn't happen, that people don't feel like they're spending hours and hours on something that we are then going to rehash and essentially you probably didn't need to meet in the first place. That's just my concern. I lived it, I was through it, and I don't want to put that on anyone. It's just, it's a lot. And I see you both, like, you know what I'm talking about. That probably wasn't said eloquently, but it's like in all of our best interest, what makes the most sense moving forward.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's why I just think that it would be helpful to just add a slide that said, you know, areas discussed or highlighted areas discussed or something. Just in terms of transparency, it can just be, you know, for whatever reason they weren't brought forward, but these were the areas discussed. If there's something that's of interest, this group can certainly talk about it for whatever reason. You know, it's not a problem at that point. But you know, and then I guess if there, you know, if there is a purpose later on, that we can ask for more support from the capacity committee. But then, you know, maybe at this point, this is where the committee, the school committee, moves forward with that information. Because I think that might be the missing piece, is just kind of the different areas that were talked about, but maybe didn't make it into the presentation. And then everybody knows, like, it's just out there for public, it's out there for us. And then moving forward, but that's just my 2 cents. I just want to throw it out there. I'm done.
One last little jump in before we, is that while we have members here, are there questions that you have specifically? Because as it is already knocking on 9 o'clock, you know, we wanted them here rather than, I mean, we'd also read a slide without them being here. And some of them have already had to sign off or whatever else.
Megan, I'm just gonna put you on the spot, if you don't mind. Do you mind giving me a real quick debrief on your thoughts on this and just sort of the high level conversation that we're having about who's in the community?
And hold on, maybe where you think you would see it going forward. Sorry.
No pressure, no pressure.
No pressure.
Just one person's perspective.
One sentence. Michelle.
Left 10 minutes ago. No, I mean, I think to start off with, I was involved the first time around. When we went through this, my daughter would have been the in that first grade of 6th graders that would have moved up, and I was strongly against it. And I said that at the first meeting that we had. And as Mr. Sullivan said, the parents that were against it, we just felt like this decision was being thrown at us, and there was nothing behind it. There was no reason why we did it. It just seemed like this is the easiest move, and so we're just going to haul all these kids to the high school now. You know, I know a lot went in behind the scenes, but from where we were sitting, you know, 2 weeks before school started, we were told next year the kids were moving to the high school, and as a parent, it was terrifying. And so I wanted to be a part of this because I wanted to know everything that was going on behind the scenes, to look at the options that you guys are all talking about. And I think touring the school has been helpful. Touring the high school has been helpful. As we said earlier, I grew up here. I went to school here. I went to school at the high school. And so I kind of had the background as far as what space was available. But there's a lot of new information that's come out of this committee as far as things like if the 6th graders move to the high school. I wasn't aware that the teachers that are teaching seniors are also teaching 7th graders, that there is some parts of the school where the seniors are walking through the halls where the seventh graders are. Not that that's like a major concern, but just that there's a lot more intermingling than we thought there were. I think learning about this whole thing with the MSBA and as far as if we move the sixth graders up, that could have financial implications for our town. That's something that I had no idea about. From where I'm sitting, this whole integrated preschool and all of our special education needs, both here and at the high school, way over my head as far as the classroom space that's needed for these kids. And I think Jen brought up a good point as far as I still don't know at this point in time what the quote unquote requirements for the special education kids for the preschool with the peer models. Like I feel like I have learned so much in these last 9 months with things I knew nothing about, but as far as what we tried to present to you today, everybody's saying there's a lot of what ifs, and there are a lot of what ifs. But I just feel like there's still so much we don't know as far as, again, are we using this space here as best as we can? I don't know that because I don't know, like Jen was talking about, those requirements. And whether we move the preschool up, people are going to be upset about that, and there are going to be financial implications for that. Or if we move the sixth graders up, obviously people are going to be upset about that, and there'll be financial implications about that. For me, my biggest concern, or the biggest point I tried to hammer home at every meeting, was that at some point it felt like we were just going around in circles. And so my thing was, if we decided that moving the sixth grade up is the best option, what does that look like? And so for me, and everyone on our committee has heard me say it multiple times, is if we move the sixth grade up and we do, I believe they were calling it a middle school academy, well, then this is our go big or go home moment, where if we have a 6th through 8th academy, let's bring in all these STEM classes. Let's make it fantastic so that the 6th grade parents are actually excited about the option of their kids moving up. And so my questions were around the programming of the curriculum, or we know that they would be losing some things by moving up. Do they lose specials, things like that? But what are we giving them? And I feel like we had this conversation, what's the timing that's involved with that? So if we decided right now on February 1st that the 6th grade is moving up, does that take a year to put all that programming in place? Does it take 18 months? Does it take 2 years? I know when they discussed it before, they talked about grants and things like that. So there's obviously a ton of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Jen was talking about simple things like desks. I mean, there's just so much going on. I just feel like if we need to make a decision, we as a committee don't even know what the timeline is to be able to implement that decision. So I don't know. I feel like I'm sorry. I'm talking around in circles. I just think there's just, I feel like we looked at a lot of different things on our end, and obviously by having so many different stakeholders with so many different backgrounds, we had a whole bunch of teachers who they were super concerned about class sizes, like Audrey was talking about. So that's one piece of the puzzle. We had people who were really concerned about school choice kids coming in. That's a piece of the puzzle. For me, it was, the programming. I'm also big with GAA. So if you move the 6th graders up to the high school, they have the potential to play on high school teams, which would decimate GAA. So, you have that portion of it. Megan comes from the special ed portion of it. So she had her concerns about, making sure we have all these programs that are available to all the kids and the families that are in the area. And so there are just so many pieces. I don't know what the right answer is, to be honest with you.
Do you feel like the committee still has value added, or is it come to the end of its life?
My God, what is my question?
I can give this to you because you're one of my closest friends. So I can put you on the spot like this.
So I think the financial piece of it, like the MSBA portion of it, I think a real question right off the bat that could kind of steer us in one way or the other is, if we move 6th grade up, would we have to give back $500,000? Obviously I have no idea. So, I think if we took it in smaller chunks and found out some of these questions, that could kind of help steer the boat a little bit. Like you're saying about minimum requirements for grade, that would be a place to start. I think we could take smaller chunks, like I said, and at least start maybe crossing some answers off or just steering the vote a little bit straighter.
I just have one comment. I don't like hearing minimum. I don't know, because I'm just gonna throw this out there. I look for the best for my child. So that's my expectation, is I want the best for all the kids. That's how I think about my kid. I want whatever is the best for her, and that's what my expectation is for every student.
And I think we all do that from here, but everyone's definition of best for their kid is going to be, I think, not necessarily 100% the same. And that's where I know personally that's where I'm having a hard time with it. And I will say this, just because we're not, just because I'm not going, right? But I know in my heart of hearts that people in Granby can be rational, and we are able to have adult conversations when things are done thoughtfully. And I said from the very beginning that we wouldn't be in this situation if we had been treated well the last time. Megan and I were two parents that, so I couldn't have been over what I wanted to, but after we did this, I was going to go for it. If I had been talked to like an adult and treated like an adult and given the information like that I'm looking for now, I probably would have been able to have a more rational discussion about moving my daughter to in the 6th grade to the high school. But instead, I felt like my back was up against the wall, and there were all these things that I still feel like are unanswered about what I'm actually doing. And so, just transparency, there you go. I know that we can have rational discussions about this, but again, the simple thing is, are we saying at this point that that is our answer to move the 6th grade in 2 years, and so we can thoughtfully push this out? Thoughtfully go through and have the conversations with MSBA. Thoughtfully have the conversations with the parents. Thoughtfully have conversations with curriculum directors and with students and staff and teachers. And I feel like if this is the thing, the biggest what if, and really, to me, the only real option that I see in this is moving to 6th grade.
But we don't even know if that is an option, because we actually have to contact MSBA.
But
So that's why I don't think we can make a
But
decision.
actually,
regardless.
this is showing us we could actually sustain potentially for 6 years, is what it
Correct.
really is showing us.
Yeah.
Though, with those numbers, because we're over the number of classrooms.
No, because depending on how we choose to utilize school choice, we could sustain 21 for 6 years, potentially.
With implications.
Correct, but if that's what we need to have.
Can we
the
really
discussion.
quick, just because we have other committee members, do you mind, like, I know we're,
Absolutely.
it's late, and I
We
appreciate.
didn't get to talk, I feel like, much either about, we had done some 6th grade dabbling at one point, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to word it.
So because
Thank you, Megan.
we didn't feel our charge was to come up with here's option A, B, C for the committee. But knowing that curriculum implications, if 6th grade were to come, that was my reason for joining the committee, because I was still in my role as a high school teacher. I was very concerned with that one of the original iterations that 6th grade was just put into the building as its own little pod. And so my concern was, how does this get integrated? If 6th grade is brought in, how do we utilize the opportunities that we have in the high school for computer classes, art classes, the different components that the high school has to offer? And so I've started to look at some of those ways of integrating, not just here 6th grade, you've got 2 rooms, you're in the building, but genuinely integrated into the school programming. Megan talked about some of the changes and I don't want to belabor this, but when I came to the district to teach, back to the district to teach, I taught 8th grade. The 7th and 8th grade was a separate wing. high schoolers did not go through. I mean, it was a little game for me to go get them out of the high school because they were trying to take the fastest way to class. Like, we had to move away from that because of financial constraints in the district. That's why our 7th grade science teacher teaches 3 high school sections and 2 7th grade sections. If we return to a more middle school model, we eliminate some of those areas where students are mixing, because the dynamic would be different, the class sizes would be different, the utilization of staff would be so much different. So that goes to wherever the committee, the school committee charges us for a plan, whatever that is, then we will put together the plan that best serves all of our students. So I don't know, looking for more than that.
No, that was it. Because we have this discussion of, we're not gonna say, hey, Mr. Garland, do you mind settling this all up right now, like figure it all out, but we might not use it ever. But thanks for doing that extra work. Like, it became like, we need to see what the committee says, the committee needs to discuss. Really? And I know there's more members, I think, that we're ready to speak up to. I see Marcus raising his hand too.
So I just wanted to say some that I would like to also see the benefits more than like, I want to see the pros and the cons. Like, these options have pros as well as the cons. Like, having the, I don't want to put this out there because I don't want to be like forcing any opinions. And because that was the problem last time, was that we were saying these were the options and then people just jumped, said, oh, that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. So I don't want to put that out there. But say we do bring the 6th grade in, and we're talking about developing this community between the older students and the younger students. Like, this opens the door for these things to occur in the building. And I also think it's a little bit of a double standard. This is also a side note, that we're saying that we don't want to send the 6th grade or the preschool over there to the bad school. Like, that's the dirty, that's the rundown. Like, there is benefits there. And if we're saying that that's not okay for them to be going over them, and is it okay for us to be in that building in general? Like, that's another thing we have to look at, but obviously that's a whole nother option and a whole lot of other planning. But I just want to see the pros and the cons to these options. And again, that goes back to providing a list of these options.
I thought I saw Andrea.
A long time.
Yes.
And I really just want to, I guess, again, I'm just going back to, is there a benefit of continuing to meet, or do you feel like you've spun your wheels and you're there? Like, that's my bigger thing. Like, where do we go from here?
I feel like you've
Like a
given us,
list of options that were discussed with pros and cons attached to each. If nothing else, that seems like.
I guess, like, at that
one
point,
next
be
step
like,
that's
what
not
do you
as
want to say the list of options are?
I'm sorry.
What do we want to say are the list of options?
That could be a-
Because again, that's where we wanted to provide this information, and maybe from it, we draw what the list of options are, because there are all the what ifs involved in it. So
We're back a step though.
Yeah, I don't want to go back and stuff,
Yeah.
but it was more of like, are these people, are you gonna, like, to make sure that they're okay continuing, because this is a lot of work. I don't want to assume that people are okay continuing another 9 months of work without
Well,
making sure.
I think we might have, different opinions on how much longer. I think we talked about following up after this meeting to kind of see the direction you guys wanted us to go in, knowing we knew we didn't have an answer that we could give you. We knew that we were in some places scratching the surface, but in other ways we felt like, yeah, this made sense, but we certainly can share more information. I'm happy, to research a topic. I mean, I don't know if the whole committee needs to research this particular topic on, I can't think of like, I think when we talked about school choice last year, we talked about, okay, well, what does that mean? What are those like? There's information out there. So if you're looking for what are requirements for X, Y, and Z, that doesn't maybe require a whole committee to do work. That might be just require me asking a few questions, or Adam or Todd, and bringing it to you guys, like, or outlining it in, some document to you, because we want to make sure we have good information.
Yeah, so I do have a question. It was related around when this building was first in the planning process. What did the frameworks look like for elementary school, middle school, and high school? And how does that, if there are changes made, what does that look like and what is the impact financially based on that information at that time? Not what it looks like now, but when that decision was made at the time that the MSBA said yes, K through 6. Well, the frameworks, because when they started going through the planning process of what was the, what did elementary look like at that point?
What was the intention of each classroom?
Or just what elementary in general, what was that? What did it look like in a building, not just for Granby, but for Massachusetts?
That's only like 5 years, that's only maybe 10 years old, right?
20,
Not even 10 years.
or 2014.
But if we're talking about financially,
I'm saying like when did we apply for this space to be used for?
right? And how did it change from then to now? Like when you're looking at,
So I do recall that there were classrooms cut out, I think because of funding, is my understanding. And I don't remember, and I can find the specifics, that's MSBA, and the feasibility study said that should this building, the demographics in this building grow, the population grow, that there is room at the junior senior high school. I remember that because it was a point that was made throughout the last process, but I would have to go back to find it in.
so based on that information, and if it was, what is it gonna cost the town if we made some changes, like we moved something? Or like if 6th grade went there, or if pre-K went there, and we changed the dynamics of this school, does that really have an impact financially to us based on that clause in the building?
In a number of ways, potentially, MSBA in an informal conversation said moving 6th grade next door could open up a conversation about recouping funds, but it was not that if you move 6th grade, you have to pay it back.
Which is why I thought it was super important that we had town involvement, which is why if we continue this, I really would like to encourage town involvement, especially if people offered to be a part of it. Because that conversation that I've already heard is spinning around is what I wanted to like latch on to
I think the
here.
town involvement will not be on a committee base, that was like a separate committee, that will be.
Like to come with us, right? Like if they're already having that conversation, we should know. And we need to have those conversations. Because my understanding was that it was through MSBA voted, this town voted on a K-6 school. So if there are ramifications from moving that, we need to figure that out. And what are they?
But is
Is it,
that an MSBA question, or is that the town saying that there's a potential issue with us changing it? So if the town is gonna have an issue, shouldn't they be forthcoming with that?
Emory was, I remember Emory saying that there was part of the issue was you had to say K through 6 because MSBA does not reimburse for pre-K. So therein was sort of like the crux of the problem initially. We couldn't put pre-K on the application because of funding, but now it's starting to go down
a rabbit hole? We don't need, is anyone still on here that we can ask about the committee? Has anyone stuck it out?
I think that Audrey and Megan had already had plans, as I'm understanding, to regroup with your committee after this. I would appreciate if you could pull this group and see if they're interested in still moving forward. I think we need to get our thoughts going back to the action that I was giving all of us, with the exception of Audrey, to put down sort of what we think this committee should be doing. And if we still think that there is need for this committee, and then the capacity update needs to be on the agenda more often, but certainly for the next meeting, because we need to have more full committee discussions about this. One thing I would like to see, if either you could send it, is just some of the discussion notes or whatever that we have based on building use as it is, like when you guys toured it, and just some of the other thoughts, just for my own reading pleasure. I would appreciate that. And the slide that Jill was referencing, just all of the different things that you guys had talked about and put in here because they were sort of eliminated as no longer viable. And just so, right, that's what you were saying, Jill, just kind of outline.
Yeah, they were discussion topics, just so that for transparency purposes, just for us and, you know, everyone to know that they were considered, but were not brought forward.
And then I just want to make sure, Andrea, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. I'll just be listening to see what's next.
Okay, and Kristen, is Kristen still on? You're still on mute, I think.
I'm here. Sorry. No, I'm just trying to find out what the next steps are, if there are any, and to see if there's even subcommittees.
You want to be on those too.
I had volunteered. I know that at the end of our last meeting, we kind of said it was kind of like the end of this group, you know, because we were kind of questioning, like, okay, so where do we go from here? And it was kind of like, okay, well, we fulfilled this one task. And then it's up to the school committee to decide, will there be like subcommittees, you know, because I know that, what was it? Jen, I believe, said, you know, I want to think about the whole student. Well, when you think about that whole student, it goes into everything: transportation, movement in hallways, course loads, stuff like that. So, you know, I'm just trying to figure out where you guys are going, and if I can help, great. If not, I'm sure others will volunteer as well.
Thank you. I think that's everybody that's on, that was part of it. That I can see. Yes. I think we should probably wrap this up.
I do want to address, because Stephanie, you're saying multiple times how town is asking to be involved in this process. So you want the town involved in this school capacity committee? Because we kind of viewed it as like they're already involved in our committee, so they will be a part of this process too.
Right, I guess I just meant if this continues and, or people decide to, you know, discontinue, because it is a lot. Are you gonna go through to who was interested perhaps beforehand? We're gonna open it up. I don't need to go down that rabbit hole yet, but that's just where my mind is going. Because it is a lot. And there's gonna be more people, I can almost guarantee you, reaching out after this, because people are gonna get fired up regardless on what they wanna do. So I just wanna make sure that it's really, it's hard. It's, yeah.
I'll happily bow, and you can step
No,
right
no,
in.
that's not what I'm saying. I have a feeling it's, you know, it's going to, when it's such a big thing like this, regardless of how you go, everyone does want their, I think it's great, like, people want to be involved, but I'm just curious how that looks. That should just be one of your conversations going forward with the committee, and, you know, what it's gonna look like, or if there's a subcommittee. Committee.
I think, right, like, we spoke, you know, we had well over 20 people interested, I believe, and we wanted to make the group manageable, and we wanted to make sure that the work we were doing wasn't getting out ahead of time, things like that. And so, like, having a committee of 11 or 12 people was like the kind of the right number. So we wish we could have everybody, but we were considering, like, does this become 10, you know, like, does this unravel before we even get started? And we opened, I mean, I remember in June, you know, after getting everybody together and being like, and neither Audrey nor I wanted to be like, okay, we're going to tell you what to do. We wanted them to ask us questions. We wanted to have a very organic feel to it, which may have made it take a little longer, frankly, because it takes time to find information. It takes time to put the pieces together. And so, you know, this is where we are. We had to kind of create it from the ground up. We're like, okay, look around, tell me what you see. You know, what do you see in this building, and what are questions that you have? And some of those questions are, you know, have quick answers, and some of them are like, that's a lot of change that, you know, needs to happen in order to get to that point. And, you know, is that feasible? You know, so those are certainly things I'm happy to outline more of that information for you guys. Yeah. Go ahead, Andrea.
The last thing after I was listening to those comments that I wanted to just throw out there is subcommittees and subcommittees can be nice tools, but I would go back to what Todd was saying, and no matter what our decision is, it should really be planful. And no matter which way anybody looks at it, that is in the best interest of our students, whether it's our youngest students or our older students. We should probably keep that at our forefront. The planfulness is what we need to focus on. And while whatever decision the school committee makes is going to be a very difficult one, people are going to have to respect that decision and then get involved in the planfulness of making this work in the best interest of all our students. And I just wanted to leave you with that thought, because that's what's most important here.
Thank you. I think, if that was all right, we'll move on to the next topic.
Yes.
I think it should be captured well enough on what we're thinking for next meeting, next agenda. And when we have our discussion, we'll just kind of go around quickly and talk about how we're seeing the use of the committee and all that based on what I've already said a number of times.
I'd love it in writing too, please.
I need to send it out.
Anybody, yeah, rather than like me having a shorthand what you're saying, like if you could type it out and have it in writing, whoever's sharing, that would be much appreciated.
That's homework.
If you have more that you'd like, yes, we do.
Any purpose?
Nope. I'm not a board school.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we met as a subcommittee for the evaluation committee and just talked about the focus indicators and the best way just to highlight. Ethan was gracious enough to add them to the rubric of the in-cycle summative eval review that's in our folders under the evaluation review, or the evaluation folder. So in that document, there is a column right next to, in between the goals and the description, and the focus indicators were added there, and then highlighted in yellow underneath for areas to look at.
And we'll just throw out there, thank you, Jill, around the focus indicators attached to goals. Like I could see ways that other focus indicators might lead into those.
It's in the superintendent folder. It's not in our. Sorry.
That's why I said.
I can see her face. It's in the evaluation folder. Sorry, my apologies. Go right ahead. Because it's not in the committee folder for tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was just saying some of the focus indicators, I could see how certain goals might lead into focus indicators that I might not have listed. And I also recognize you might not always clearly see how an indicator I listed might connect to that. So I think that's part of the discussion that we'll have throughout this process, but I just wanted to be clear about that. Another thing, and I talked to Jill about this yesterday, the subcommittee is, this being my first time through it, our first time through this together, I feel like I really appreciate this process. I also, and I think Audrey and Jill would agree, like we're building the plane as we're flying it, and some of the things are a little bit backwards than I anticipate they would be next year, which I'm certainly okay with. But I just wanted to make sure that, like, people know when I'm sharing evidence, it's not always just something Stephen Sullivan did. Okay, Jill and I had this conversation. I think there's going to be things related to the fiscal systems that Adam worked on. There's going to be things, the SEL presentation that Bill shared tonight is a good example about a lot of work went into that. That connects to the goal. So a lot of work went into that from Bill and Scott and the team at East Meadow. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as we're talking through this, and it's helpful for me to say those things out loud so I can hear feedback from you all. And I also don't know that now's the time to throw it out there. I know we want to do a mid-cycle review. I think that's important. I was wondering if people would be open to that being the first meeting in March rather than the next meeting in February, as we're just trying to land on these now.
I'm fine with that. I think just so everybody's aware, the thought process that Audrey and I had kind of talked about in our previous subcommittee meeting was getting this rubric that's listed in the evaluation folder, just a hard copy out to everybody who wouldn't be using it formally for the formative assessment conversation, but just to start to kind of familiarize everybody with, not, you might already be, but just to kind of re-familiarize or familiarize everybody with it. And just have it in front of us, while Stephen was talking through, his progress towards goals and maybe talking through some pieces of evidence, things like that, was one of the areas, as well as printing out and having like a hard copy folder for like the full rubric, and just making sure people had an opportunity, you can see it digitally, of course, but just starting to have some other ways to look at these materials as well, just because it can be a lot of information to, go through at once. So I think if we talked about March, the first meeting in March being the focus of that, then Audrey and I could make sure that those materials in a folder and things like that were ready for everybody for that meeting, so that you could look digitally or have them out in front of you to just make some notes on or whatever felt the most helpful. As always, evaluations super riveting.
And I mean, I'll throw it out there at 9:35. I think the plan was always that we would introduce these focus indicators tonight, and then they can get voted on at the next meeting, so people have some time to digest them, ask questions.
You don't want to spend a half an hour per bullet right now?
I'm happy to do whatever you would like to do.
I really don't. I want to read.
But that's part of why I asked if instead of the next meeting doing like the mid-cycle review, doing that in March, so I know that I'm speaking to these specifically.
Everybody else good with that? I think Jill said she's good with that. And everybody else good with that?
Mm-hmm.
And you're okay with that?
Yes.
All right, then let's do that. That felt really good to have like something where I felt like.
Yeah, I feel like a lot, like, this is a lot too, this, I mean, the last conversation was a lot too, but this is a lot too.
I didn't
And
even know that was
so
coming.
I appreciate like having the structure, so we all are talking about the same things when we're talking about it, because if you look through this, even right now, I'm highlighting, I didn't even notice it before, Audrey and Jill, like under each indicator where you can rate them, it says check yes if this is a focus indicator. So I'm just going through and highlighting those now too. So there's a lot to it. And we're not even using it.
Every time you read it, you see something else.
Yes.
So we can add that to a vote next meeting and then on the agenda for the first March meeting.
Say that again. Vote for the next meeting.
Vote for the focus indicators next meeting and then formative assessment conversation, the first March meeting.
Okay. Are we good on this part then?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
So Marcus touched on it a little bit earlier in his report about trying to build those connections between junior, senior high school and students in East Meadow. So the admin teams at both schools have been working together and are planning a drop what you're doing and read to the East Meadow students. So having high school students come over to East Meadow classes. The plan right now is that event will take place on Thursday, February 17th, which is also Pajama Day at East Meadow, if I read the Spirit Week calendar correctly. So wanted to give people a heads up. I think we talked, Stephanie and I talked a little bit about ways to build these connections, and not just so the students can see, like we talked about transitioning at whatever grade level, right? Like there to make some of these connections, and also at the parent level. And those are some of the things that I know Ally and Todd and Bill and Scott are thinking about too, about ways we can provide new students next door or staff next door to provide information to parents here at a younger age. So it might help some decision making that people might be considering. I did want to mention an update on our transition to the new at-home testing program. Right now we're up to 331 staff and students who have signed up district-wide. That's about, a little over a third of our staff, which, our pool testing numbers are not quite there, but test and stay did get about to that point because I think people realized once they were close contacts, they can sign up for test and stay in school. So that drove those numbers up, but we are seeing a pretty good response to that. The first round of staff test kits came in last week. We anticipate the first round of student test kits this week. Distribution, hopefully by the end of the week. We were thinking Friday, but I don't know what Friday will look like. So we're hoping to get those out by Thursday, and then Thursday. At that point, we would discontinue our test and stay, and the contact tracing goes along with it. And like I said, 2 weeks ago, as we made this transition, we want to make sure that we are assessing our capacity and the potential of adding symptomatic testing and things like that moving forward. So working both with our in-house nursing team as well as the CIC, which is the state vendor for that, but it's been a really good response so far. Also want to let the school committee know, and I can get some more information about this, but last year, for the first time, we did the high school senior internship and education project. We're doing that once again. It's a program that provides paid work-based learning opportunities for seniors. We have 22 seniors working in various K-8 classes, both here at East Meadow and at the junior high school next door as educational interns. This is funded fully through the state. It's providing resources and supports that we haven't always had available. And the students are providing assistance to classroom teachers, support staff, gaining experience in an educational setting, working as tutors, mentors, teaching assistants, as well as lunch and recess monitors. And so far, the students are really reporting amazing stories about their experiences. Remember, one even got invited to a kindergartner's birthday party last week. So I will get some pictures and stuff like that up there as well.
That's awesome. I've heard great things from at least my parents feel about having the high schoolers come in, and they were so excited about it.
Yeah, Bill joked, we've had one here for longer than a year, and he's like, this senior walks in, he's like a celebrity, like everybody stops what they're doing, the kids stop what they're doing and see them. So it's nice to have, and we're fortunate that it's funded through the state, and our students are earning money during the trip.
Awesome. That's all the reminder about the clinic.
Thank you. There is a clinic, another vaccination clinic this Sunday from 9 to 1 here at East Meadow Gym. And you can sign up through the Student Health Services site and the website. And I know it's gone out in the weekly COVID notification and through both schools communication. Thank you.
I only have two things. The one standard is the insurance project. We're still waiting on.
I like how we're calling it insurance project now.
That's what we have to keep down on the points. Okay, you guys on it? There is no date. Should we still have talking for 6 weeks out on March 2nd, still meeting, so now we're looking at 4 weeks out. But it's not completed yet. We are almost there. Like I said, last meeting, it's just a few cameras that we need to replace or fix, but security will be fixed. Alarms are all fixed, so we got about 98% of it. So,
and if you're thinking back to the summer, if we said 4 to 6 weeks at that point, yes, we did say 4 to 6 weeks at that point. So the supply chain is still a struggle. There's also been a shift in one of our vendors sold in late summer, early spring, sold to a bigger company. That bigger company has been less responsive and more challenging. So once this project is complete, hopefully before the 1-year anniversary, we are looking at a change to, we feel like in that way, like a local vendor is much easier, and we had a local vendor, but they're no longer in operation. Sorry, still.
no, that's okay. That's good. More, my second most importantly, not still. Info and finance subcommittee next meeting. And just some quick numbers that we're not going to get into it tonight, but we will certainly be in the next few months. There was an increase in our foundation budget of about 4% or $328,000. Again, I'll get into it, but our foundation budget is built on our enrollment and all the subcategories. So we saw a large increase there, some of that having to do with the student opportunity tax formula taking place this year. An increase in local aid, which is the town or the town portion that they need to fund us. That went up about 5% or $282,000. And our add all that together, our municipal spending increased by about 3%, $300,000. Municipal spending is the minimum that we need to spend as universities and so this is real high level numbers at this point. As far as our process, we are our cabinet's going to be our members and their budgets to me on Friday. The preliminary requests. I have all that information, put it all together. Steve and I and the cabinet are going to meet on Monday to review everyone's budgets, and Steve and I will meet with principals and department heads eventually to go over their preliminary requests. We'll have further meetings after that, so we finally get to the budget to you and ultimately to the town. So there's still a lot of work to be done. We're really waiting for the governor to have the budget, and now is when the work really starts. So we have a couple months of work to do with hopefully we can just start this spring. Next meeting, over that. So a lot more information next meeting and all the questions.
Done. What subcommittees are we going to?
And then feel that evaluation again.
Did we follow up with policy for D, right? Stephen?
Right? Didn't we vote on J?
I don't think we voted on D. I think we were supposed to look at it on that.
I don't remember doing that for a while.
We had discussed.
So would you rather policy then? We can do budget finance and policy? Yeah?
Sounds good. I think so.
Well, we do both, let's see.
Same people, right? We just vote.
Yeah.
So the two of us for both, can we do both, or say both?
Yeah.
And then that amount of time, we like what we get through on one, and if we get to the other.
That's
So I
fine.
think what we would do is we'll post all three, we'll say, policy and evaluation, because it's the same group of people. And we'll have, maybe we'll try to do, you guys, which one would you want to do first? Would you want to do policy?
Policy.
So we'll do policy from, how is it doing? Like breaking out at about 6:45, right, to about 7:30 or something, so 6:45 to 7 for policy, and then 7 to 7:30 for evaluation, or do you think you need more time for policy?
I think if you just, however you want to do it, and then you could always.
Okay, it's not, I think as long as they're posted together, we should be fine, right? Because the timing is not necessarily as.
I don't
think we need to do that
either will
separate.
take. I don't think either will take the full time.
Right, so splitting it between the two times should be fine. So I think instead of doing 15 and then a half hours, whatever. Whatever the timing is, split it between both times, but policy go first.
Yes, please.
Okay. So that'll be good, and then Jen, you're good with doing budget and finance, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, that's what we want to roll on that into.
Do that today.
And then, is that it for you then?
That's it.
All right.
Just gonna get ready to turn the camera off.
Slow down, Jill's got CES to update us on. And then that.
It was standing.
Want to do it? Okay, I think we're about to run up.
After 4 hours, that's until 10:15. Yeah, we got plenty of time. We got a whole morning.
My computer's running.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we did meet last Wednesday, and they said they were sending along their executive director's report. I haven't seen it on an email. Unless I have it, I will share that out to everybody. But they did review, kind of give it a budget update. They are using TMS, so they did provide that. And give an update on how they're doing with negotiations. And give an update on their migrant worker program. And, talked about Todd Gosda, the director, his evaluation. So the process for that. And that was what we talked about, and then I will share out the whole report once I get that in my email.
And is his process for evaluation similar to what we're doing?
Slightly, but it differs a little bit. It's a, they do like a 360 eval, so all staff, all stakeholders end up with like a shorter survey, and that kind of goes into the evaluation, and then there is a subcommittee that kind of compiles everything and does all of that piece to then come up with like a final evaluation. So it's built a little bit differently, but along the same lines.
I was just wondering if you picked up anything from there that you're like, oh, we should do this or try that, or.
So the subcommittee thing was what really got me thinking that this was, I know Tracy had talked about it a few times, but that's what really got me thinking that that might be the way for us to go too. I know they're much bigger, but yeah, that was one part, and then it does look different. But that's it.
Anything else for that? Anything else for agenda? So as I see it, we moved computer science to 2:15. We have the school, the company presentation. So do we want to call it school capacity update, or how do we want to see that?
School committee, school capacity discussion.
And just, it's gonna live on the agenda, I think. Just going forward as we're doing this, so as a reminder, we can skip over it if we don't have anything new.
And if Megan has unearthed anything or we've unearthed anything,
Give it up.
guys too, we'll report out on that as well at that time.
And then whenever you guys get a chance to get that slide, I
Yes.
didn't email that to you, but I did email everybody about the action for next week, but I can send you a separate email about that, you and Megan.
And then hopefully if we get it all updated again, I can re-put it in the folder for this week too. Or the 15th.
Next week. And then the committees, we just said would be policy, and then evaluation, and budget packets. So that's for 2:15. Anything else to be captured for the agenda for next time? And will there be anything to update for the agenda for anything? Probably not.
Unfortunately. But I think, like, I anticipate that's gonna have to be part of the conversation through the budget process as well too. right?
Sure. Yep.
Because we marked that piece, so.
Yeah. Okay.
And then just so, I'm just looking at our calendar real quick. Like school choice seat recommendations, we have coming up in March too, so just so people know, that's another. I know it's all connected, but some discussion around that. Probably first.
That brings me to another thing as we're talking about agenda is.
No, I was just nodding along with the work.
I'm wondering how, I don't want to have another like subcommittee, but the school choice thing has been a very, like, we always feel like we wanted to know more. I feel like there's so much discussion around it. Do we think we need to have another subcommittee so people are meeting about that, or do we want to just put it on the agenda now and start to talk about it? Because like Stephen just said, everything is sort of tied. We've got, this capacity thing, we've got school choice numbers, like space at the high school, like everything is tied, how we use the space, whatever.
I think it's going to be a big part of the discussion with the school capacity, so I think it's going to happen organically just from that.
So maybe we do have it, the living on there or underneath as continuing business.
So what I'm almost envisioning on the agenda is like, understanding A is school capacity, and then.
Sorry.
We're making sure that Adam's weighing into with budgetary implications of that piece too.
So
Will certainly be a part of the budget piece. So maybe we'll just talk about, no, it's gotta be something different.
I thought that we had on there, didn't we always have on there the capacity or student updates on,
Student enrollment.
Oh,
Yeah.
the data dashboard.
Yeah, that should be good today. We'll put that on.
yeah, but I thought we talked about that. I mean, because wouldn't that be part of that discussion? Because if we're looking at how many people are Granby residents and how many are not, and how many school out, choice out compared to choice
Stacy
in.
has that already built into her data dashboard. So
Right,
it's a good
so-
spot For,
I mean, there's a conversation that we could be having based on that. I mean,
I guess my biggest thing is, do we foresee the need to put school choice discussion on more than just for that March timeframe? Like, do we feel like there's additional conversation that we need to have because there's so many of those other things? Or are we happy with leaving it to, like Audrey said, organically happen with our enrollment dashboard conversation that we'll have next week
yeah,
or 2 weeks, and the school capacity, like it's all going, is everyone?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's all gonna live there. Gonna be both.
Yeah.
And then there'll be budget conversations.
Yeah.
And that too, about
Yeah.
that as well. So Adam, you can throw that on what we talked, as, yeah.
So I do have a question, Stephen, when do we have to have those numbers by?
For advertising and everything.
Yeah.
Say we should have them in no later than the end of March.
Okay,
Technically, we had to have a lottery, but it didn't have to happen until June, so have a little bit of time, but.
but the sooner that we have the information, the better.
Yeah, I think March or April is when we start to have families reaching out and asking.
And I do know, since I've been on the committee, we have adjusted school choice numbers as a step, as a delayed, or not a delay, but a separate labor vote, is what I was trying to say, like, we had decided on numbers. I think it might have been the first year here, actually, we had decided on numbers in the March timeframe. Things happened, and then it was like late July, early August, I can't remember, but we ended up, revisiting those and adjusting.
yeah, because I know,
We had
I.
a vote. We had an additional vote.
But doesn't there have to be some like extenuating circumstances, some
Because
change?
I remember bringing that up about kindergarten, when it was such a small
It was
number.
before the year had.
We visited with Stacy, but my recollection, and I wonder if Adam's is the same, is that when we reached out about this exact conversation.
We have an email.
Desi said to us, your school committee is going to vote either that they are opening school choice seats or not. That is all that Desi
Not the number.
cares about, not the numbers or the grades. And you're opening seats or you're not. But,
So we can change seats.
But I think there was
You did get an email.
But it was something where we adjusted the number of seats. From like, I feel like.
yeah, and I know what you guys are talking, like, I've heard that before too, but see, when Stacy's on for enrollment too, we can look at it, but, there's a school choice FAQ too.
Obviously, that email that we represent, we owe the state our school choice information by June first.
Okay,
But whether we're opening seats or not.
Whether, yeah.
but you need the numbers.
That,
You need the numbers, you said?
Numbers for advertising. We only tell the state if we're participating in the school choice program or not.
So that's all you have to say is yes or no?
to the state is that we are opening school choice for the next
Okay,
fiscal school year, sorry, next school.
So that's the vote that we have to have with the conversation.
Right,
about-
we usually do it in March though, because that's like, that's when they do kindergarten registration.
Right.
It's like when like people, it's just like
Right,
that.
so we do it in March so that those, that we have to have that vote about, and it's solely, are we interested or are we not? It's not about numbers of classrooms, like numbers of seats per grade per class. It was, are we participating in the program? So we said that we were not taking,
A vote on seats. We could take a little more time to.
we can say yes or no to the program, and then that gives us the time to figure out what
it just shortens
But
the
because
window.
we are also going to high school, wouldn't we? It's not just East Meadow, we're talking choice. So.
No, it's the program.
Right, it's the program. So we can say yes to the program and then we figure out how many seats within grades after.
That's what I understand. Is that,
So this is interesting, so I'm looking through that email, and I remember, I'm looking through the conversation we had that all we owe the state is if we are doing it or not, but that they collect a survey electronically that asks us for all those details.
Right, so how many per
Grade,
class?
how many seats.
Yep.
So that's just for data on their end, but the only obligation to the state we had was that we are doing school choice or not, but then they do actually want that information, so.
That's still by June 1st.
This is by June 1st.
And then once we give them those figures per grade, we do have to stay by that.
so it's possible that what I'm thinking of is that it was before that deadline, that we tweaked what we had voted on something that tweaked it before it was submitted.
I mean, if we still talked about it in March, and then,
We have March, April, May.
I mean, it shortens the window for advertising and giving people time to plan and think about, that piece, which we don't necessarily want to do. But if we needed more time because we're weighing out all these other pieces that we've talked about tonight, and where this information is living within capacity and budget and enrollment and all those other pieces. I mean,
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is that we maybe don't have to have as much stress around it because we can put our numbers out there and advertise. We can always, if we need to, we can adjust up. If we need to, but based on where we're at. And I think that we are going to numbers because my time is very used to that. I know we did some adjustments to that number. I just can't remember the specifics of it. First go around.
And I just certainly want to make sure that, because I've never come across the numbers adjusted after they were.
It must have been because, it must have been before we submitted to the state, like we had a conversation, talked about it, and then.
So I think this came up because there was students who were here, but then moved out and wanted to choice in after we had made that decision.
Well, it depends on how they were. They were school choice to begin with and then left. And then
No, they were in town and then,
but then they're
they
new
come back, they don't have to ask.
They were residents, they moved out of town. And
Yeah.
wanted to stay going here, but we had shut down school choice.
Right.
So then they couldn't come
If
in.
they're a resident, they don't need to.
no, they
longer
were,
resident,
they
they
moved
moved
out
away.
to a different,
They were a resident, they moved out of residency, but they wanted to stay here. So we had stopped school choice or something at that point, and
So I
then,
thought that was. So see, that's where we get ourselves into trouble because. If they were already part of our count, they weren't a school choice seat. Like if they were.
but once they moved,
they are.
they are.
So, but they were already counted in.
This is the conundrum, but
Like that,
what
Because
they're saying is right, technically, they would have to apply for school choice.
But we had stopped it, I think, at that.
Yes.
That's where we could accept them.
Correct.
Right.
And it was an agreed that wasn't allowing school choice or something like that, so.
Right.
But we can do that because I was just reading that email.
Yeah, and then it became something where we said like, okay, well, for those grades, it might have been like 11 and 12, like, let us know. And then we can make a concession for like an individual basis for the grades 11 and 12 that we don't typically take school choice students in for. But I don't think, we didn't hear about it until like.
Yeah, it had already passed. Yeah.
because I know that there have been students that have been Granby residents and moved and they contacted a previous superintendent and they were told to fill out the state foot form and it was not even. So,
This was all COVID too, maybe. You know,
Mhm.
extra fun.
Yeah.
I don't believe a state foot form exists.
I didn't think so either, but.
Stephen's shaking his head. I don't believe any district has a state foot form because you don't maintain residency, therefore you're not considered a student.
The only state put regulations through special education, right? If like the team doesn't come to agreement about a placement or service delivery, like they stay in their current like placement until that gets worked out. But stay put in terms of,
But anyway, we're going down.
Now we are.
I'm going to give this conversation, but I think the crux of the situation is that we want to have some more discussion for choice seats, but it will not be on the agenda, it will be part of some of these other conversations that will happen as a result of that. Is that the way I'm understanding this at this point?
Yes.
Fiscal hour?
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
A motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Have a good night.